The Team House with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, this is episode 371 of The Team House. I'm Jack here with Dave, and our guest today is Mark Grdovic. He is the author of Those Who Face Death, the Untold Story of Special Forces and the Iraqi Kurdish Resistance. Those Who Face Death, that's the translation of Peshmerga, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So this book tells the story of 10th Special Forces Group in northern Iraq during the invasion in 2003, going through a whole series of things, going after Ansar al-Sharia in the north, Operation Viking Hammer, to going after Saddam's army and Kirkuk and Soleimania, all kinds of interesting stuff. I was telling you before the show, I feel like we've done probably close to a dozen interviews with different people who had different little roles on the ground in northern Iraq during that time. But I felt like this book really kind of like brings it all together because you were the S3 for 10th Group.
Third Battalion.
3rd Battalion of 10th Group when this happened, and you were in country, of course. So like just to start it off, let's talk a little bit about like your background in 10th Group and leading us into your unit's background in Kurdistan already from the 1990s.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. So I joined Special Forces and I was a 10th Grouper by trade. I was a 110 guy as a team leader. And then a few years later, I'd gone to the British Staff College. I'd been an instructor at the Q course, and I had the chance to come back to 10th Group, but the 3rd Battalion, Fort Carson. And I was telling you, I think before, I got back to 10th Group probably 3 days before 9/11. So I didn't think it was going to be quite as action-packed as it was. 10th Group has a history from the Gulf War where they didn't participate as an active unit in the Gulf War, but they did conduct Operation Provide Comfort in the north with the Kurdish refugee situation. And a very, very interesting mission, very, very dynamic. The first iteration of it in 91 was pretty chaotic, to say the least. And the guys did a great job. They did an amazing job. They went into some really remote, hard places. They linked up with some indigenous, folks and dealt with really dramatic circumstances and resolved it to a great humanitarian issue. The United States then created the no-fly zone in the north, and we stayed on for several years providing QRF up there and CSAR if any, Allied aircraft got shot down in the conduct of enforcing the no-fly zone. And that culminated in 1996 when there was a coup against Saddam that arguably has some CIA support behind it, and that's people will debate about that. Robert Baer's book is about it, and it went very, very badly. So Saddam was able to defeat the coup. So there's two aspects to that. One, in 1981, the Kurds and the Shia in the south rose up at the end of the Gulf War because they assumed that's what we were implying they should do, and it went very, very badly for both of them. Okay, so then again in 96. They rise up, and again, it goes very, very badly. And the Kurdish forces are largely slaughtered. The United States does an emergency withdrawal of all CIA and U.S. footprint in northern Iraq. The Kurds then sort of devolve, the two main Kurdish factions now devolve into a fighting match that turns into a civil war between them. So when it's 2001, 2002, and we're talking about going back into Iraq, and linking back up with the Kurds, that baggage is there. That we've actually betrayed them 3 times. Once in 1971, once in 1991, and once in 1996. And they all have that memory. They are sort of in a fragile ceasefire between their fairly brutal civil war between themselves for about 3 years. So that's the environment that the CIA and we are getting back into.
Let's talk a little bit about how post 9/11. When was it that 10th Group gets like kind of the Warno? Because there's like the unofficial one and the official one, right?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you as a member of the force, and I think everybody did this, 7th Group, 1st Group, when Afghanistan happened, everybody rationalized like it should be us. Like why are they sending 5th Group? Clearly it should be us. Everybody did that because we were all rightly so, somewhat freaked out. And I'd say the first time I'd heard a hint of, hey, we're starting to plan for a contingency invasion, I don't know if we use the term invasion, was probably February of 2002. So, like, honestly, 5 months after 9/11. Now, there wasn't much detailed planning from my perspective. I think there was at CENTCOM from like February to May. June of 2002 is where it started to get serious. Like June of 2002 was my first month as the S3 for 3rd Battalion. I had to go to CENTCOM for a planning conference. Like, so now I was fully read on to what was being intended and the plan at that point. And I will also point out, we also thought, as I joke in the book, everyone was like, look, don't tell anybody, but it's probably in about 30 days, 60 days. Like, we kept getting told, I got a friend on the staff and it's going to happen next month. So we didn't know we'd have 8-9 months to plan. We thought we'd have 30 days to plan. And that just dragged on for the better part of from June 2002 to February 2003.
And this was around the time frame that you guys started shooting pilot teams in with the CIA.
Yeah, so it's a really important point to understand the story because there's a potential that whether it's conventional forces or somebody else, they heard about this success and they think that it's magic, that if I link you up with indigenous forces in 24 hours, you can do all this great stuff. It's not what happened. The CIA reestablishes contact, I think it was June or July. And the CIA, if you're aware of it, they established specific teams, one for the North, one for the South, and one for the West. And they were called Nile, Sile, and Weil, Northern Iraqi Liaison Element, Southern Iraqi Liaison Element, Western Iraqi Liaison Element. And they were supposed to develop the situation, if you will. Now, in the North, it's pretty easy because they had a strong relationship with the Kurdish factions because we were in Kurdish territory during when we were enforcing the no-fly zone. So they reestablished contact. They came out of country. They grabbed us and said, hey, like, that's the first time I met their guys. And they said, we'd like some guys to augment our team to go back into Northern Iraq. And the term we would use would be to create a pilot team. We had actually detailed guys to the agency after 9/11 for probably the better part of, the last 10 months. So when the agency was like, we would like some of your guys, we're like, well, gee, how about these 5? Right. Or 6. Like, we knew exactly who they wanted to work with that had a relationship. So it was super easy. So in October, they all went back into country. So October 2002, they put a physical team, CIA 10th Group team on the ground in Northern Iraq, starting to do that, I'll call it that clandestine coordination.
Was that Sam's team that went in?
Yeah, Sam Faddis was, for lack of a better term, like the chief of base, let's say, the overall chief. And then he had 2 teams, one to work with each Kurdish faction. For the most part, Sam kind of migrated to the northern faction, which was the Kurdish Democratic Party, or KDP. And the rest of his team worked with the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, which is the element I was with. So we kind of divided into the north and the southern teams.
And there's a really funny story in your book that I wanted to ask you about that, while all this is going on with the pilot teams and the agency is starting to have a light footprint in northern Iraq, you guys are back at Fort Carson planning. And tell us about the Kurds that show up at your base looking for work.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, as you're alluding to, there's I slipped in a couple of anecdotes that are a little bit amusing in there. So when we were planning back at Fort Carson, particularly you got to appreciate in those days, like if someone told us we were doing classified planning, we weren't configured for that. We didn't really have real dedicated skiff space. So we're doing our planning. Myself and my sort of counterpart warrant officer, Jay Klein, are drawing graphics on a map of northern Iraq. It's probably about the size of this couch. We're literally on our knees. And all of a sudden we look up and there's 2 guys standing in the doorway, and the door's propped open with a cinder block. And they're standing in the doorway, and I look up and they immediately, hit me with like a British style salute. And they're like, sir, reporting for duty. And Jay grabs something else and throws it over the map. And he's like, and he whispered, I don't think they saw it. And one of the guys saluting goes, my hometown, Kirkuk. And I whispered to him, I was like, I think they saw it. So we quickly determined, like, who are you guys? And they introduced themselves. They're both Kurdish gentlemen. They made a pilgrimage to Fort Carson. This was their pilgrimage after 9/11 to report for duty. They were people that either worked as an interpreter or some other service during the Provide Comfort years. And this is, I can't remember if I said this in the book, this is actually really nuts. You're like, well, how did they find us? They all had, like, for lack of a better term, pay stubs or like coordination documents with the last team leader in northern Iraq for the evacuation in 96 was Captain Pat Roberson. So they were looking for Captain Pat Roberson. Captain Pat Roberson, who literally just retired as a major general a few months ago, was now Major Pat Roberson, one of our company commanders. The crazy thing is, I don't know how they got onto Fort Carson. But then I know when they got onto Fort Carson, they must have been wandering around and like, where is the 10th Special Forces Group? And some helpful American was like, oh, it's behind that berm over there. Just walk to it.
Yeah.
They walk to it. They get to the group headquarters and they asked, who's doing the secret planning? And someone's like, see that door over there propped up with the cinder block? There's guys in there that can help you out. And like, thank you, sir. Yeah. And for what it's worth, those two gentlemen were gold mines. They did turn out to be spectacular, I'm going to say patriots for lack of a better term, because like it's all funny to talk about, but like these are literally two Iraqi gentlemen of Kurdish descent that made their way to us on their own dime, are reporting for duty to go back into Iraq. And I don't know if people can appreciate like how seriously dangerous that is for them, more so than me. Like it's dangerous for me. It's complete suicide for them if this goes badly. And they were, I think we only actually probably brought like 5 interpreters for the entire battalion.
Wow.
And they were all people like that made their way to us voluntarily.
So tell us about, a little bit more in depth about putting the guys into the isolation facility, PMT.
Yeah.
You and Ken Tovo had, I remember you mentioned in the book how the teams often aren't given enough time to do PMT.
Yeah.
And you guys like try to alert them as early as possible and get them.
Of the entire story, this is one of the pieces personally I'm most proud of, as one of my responsibilities. So for the listeners that may not know, Ken Tovo, now retired Lieutenant General Tovo, formerly Lieutenant Colonel Tovo, was the battalion commander at the time. I was his operations officer. And fortunately, we have very similar analytical styles of how we approach problems, and we got along like seamlessly. The planning was very screwed up, as planning always is, particularly in the real world. Like there's sometimes where it might sound like I'm throwing stones. Like the planning wasn't very good. It's always going to be that way. You have to be able to adapt to it to a degree. CENTCOM was overwhelmed. And that could sound like I'm criticizing, but I also do respect Afghanistan is going on. And as I mentioned, look, there's various versions of the Iraq invasion as they're arguing how to do it. Should we go heavy? Should we go light? Should we do it's the same stuff you deal with at a team level. 3 course of actions, heavy, light, and the combination. So their staff is overwhelmed. As a result, they never really generated an order that translated down to SOC-CENT, the TSOC, for guidance. The TSOC never generated an order to the group, like a written order. Everybody kind of peripherally knew what was going on, but there was not a physical written order. So we were very aware of this, and we made a very conscious decision that we're not going to pass that on to our subordinates. We are going to write an order, and it wasn't a bullshit order. Like, I'm the guy that wrote it. It's about 13, 14 pages, and we're doing the best we can to give guidance that we think is worthwhile. And it's not just guidance that I got. It's our decision of this is what I need you to do. This is what I need you to do. And we were very specific that we need to get this to the teams quickly so they will have time to do something with it. The same thing you've heard your whole career, 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah.
I'm going to take 1/3. I'm going to give them 2/3. It takes discipline to do that and not convince yourself, but I'm just going to take a little more time to write a perfect order. So we spent the bulk of July. I gave the teams a warning order and said, do whatever you got to do, sort your shit out. July is yours. Come August, you're under our control. And that was because I needed to write the order. So we also then needed to plan and coordinate. We're going to put teams into isolation. And as you probably know, that's not a normal event. Like, as much as we talk about it and you do it in the Q course, isolating to go into enemy territory, because I'm not using isolation as a generic term for just planning. We're going into old school isolation. And we made a very, very deliberate decision at the time. 10th Group had a beautiful isolation facility over there. We very deliberately were like, we're not going over there. Because we knew if we go over there, we're going to get inundated with daily questions and requirements, and the guys aren't going to be left alone. So we made a crazy decision to go to Pinyon Canyon. Pinyon Canyon, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's 3 hours, it's the Camp McCall to Fort Carson, but it's 3 hours away. And there's actually, to say it's Camp McCall's not accurate, there's nothing there. Like, there's literally nothing there. There's no facilities. There's shacks, but like shacks with electricity and nothing else. So we decided we're going to take one company of teams for 1 week at a time and cycle them through isolation at Pinyon Canyon. We're going to give them a staff mission brief up front at Fort Carson and then put them on buses and drive them out there. And I make this point, the staff mission brief, I'm going to basically read the order to them and give them a chance right now to ask me questions before we put into plannings. Just, trying to escalate things, get it moving quickly. On the Tuesday and Wednesday of every one of these weeks, and we did it 3 weeks in a row, Tova and I would get up at 4 a.m. We would drive, our personal cars, the 3 hours to Pinyon Canyon. We would get out. The staff was all over it. They had the teams prepared 2 hours per team. And when I describe this, it sounds like it's crazy when I'm saying it. We did 2 hours per team, literally with a 5-minute break between the 2-hour blocks, and we did 5 teams a day. And then we got back in the car for the 3-hour drive back to Fort Carson. And, because we are getting inundated with questions from groups. So, we're absorbing all that stuff, but we're leaving the guys out there. And I make this point. So if you're familiar with how we do planning in Special Forces, the Tuesday is like what we'd call the MyCon or the concept brief to just see if you're on track. Did you understand what I asked you to do? Okay, I think you guys seem like you do. I'll be back Friday for your final brief to us. So we did it again on the Friday, the 3-hour drive, the 10 hours of briefings, 3-hour drive back. But the point of this is we didn't make it like an audition. We and it took, even with our teams, it took a little while to break them of the cycle of, do you understand what I need you to do? Yes, sir. Okay, repeat it back to me. And they'd read, a whole paragraph. I'm like, in your words, what do I need you to do? And we got them to the point where they felt comfortable dialoguing with us. And I'm like, do you have what you need? Yes, sir. I'm going to ask you, come on, man, don't do that. So but the point of this is, we really almost beat the teams in a friendly way into submission of, you've got to talk to me. If everything falls apart, do you know what's the most important thing I need you to do? And as goofy as it sounds, we spent a lot of time on the words, like what we were saying. And we stress to them, if you understand the context of our mission, I need you to continue to threaten the Iraqi army in the north. If you get into a great firefight and kill a whole bunch of them, but you guys culminate, meaning a bunch of you are killed and you're combat effective, that's in Saddam's favor. He can maneuver south. So not to sound, flippant about it, but I'm like, your mission is to not die. I need you to be a threat. And the teams got that. And that's not the way their brains were going into isolation planning, though. They were like Americans. They were thinking about attrition and how do I kill as much as possible. Like, your mission is not to kill as much as possible. Your mission is to be a continuous threat that forces Saddam against his desires to stay there and not maneuver, counterattack south.
Force multiplier type of
thing.
And
getting the guys to realize this, and you could almost watch the light bulb go off in their head.
If you're in the market for a new mattress, you've probably seen all the brands out there vying for your attention. Big names, splashy ads, all promising the same thing. But here's the only brand that does it right. It's GhostBed. GhostBed was created and is still run by manufacturing experts with more than 20 years of mattress making experience. They know the craft and they know how to build a bed that actually lasts. So how do they offer premium mattresses for up to 50% off less than the competition? It's not hype, it's smart logistics. As a family-owned company, that means there's no board of investors to answer to. It's just folks working hard, selling mattresses. These are the true manufacturing pros, and the result is an exceptional cooling and comfort at a price that won't keep you up at night. Every GhostBed mattress includes proven cooling materials backed by a 20 to 25-year warranty. You also get a 101-night sleep trial with free returns if the mattress doesn't work for you, and fast free shipping. Most orders arrive in 2 to 5 days. Right now, as a Team House listener, you can get 25% off site-wide for a limited time. You can just go to ghostbed.com/house and use the promo code HOUSE at checkout. That's ghostbed.com/house, promo code HOUSE. Upgrade your sleep with GhostBed, the makers of the coolest beds in the world. Some exclusions apply. See site for details. I want to thank GhostBed so much for continuously supporting us. It's been going on a year almost. So I really appreciate that. I hope you guys, if you're in the market for mattresses or pillows or bedding, check out GhostBed. You can go to ghostbed.com/house and get 25% off right now. Love you and love GhostBed. Thanks, guys.
How was it for you guys? Because obviously you're not planning in a vacuum, right? You have the entire rest of the U.S. military and coalition forces and everybody else. So how much was changing on your end where you would have to go back to those guys and say...
Strangely enough, CENTCOM, I think, I don't want to make it sound terrible, but didn't really care what we were doing.
Okay.
They were almost like, hey, look, we're going to fight in the South. That's where the real invasion is. We got these other things going on. They were almost like, go do your thing in the North. And it's a little bit screwed up because they didn't really dig into what am I asking you to do. They were like, you're going to go in the North and do some stuff. And and they argued amongst themselves a lot about what are we doing out in the West, like scud hunting. There was a huge argument about scud hunting in the West.
Because of the desert storm.
And that's right. That's important because there was kind of a fifth group's not going to lose the scud hunting mission, but there wasn't a need for a scud hunting mission. Scuds were not an issue. Firing scuds at Israel were not an issue in this conflict. But putting guys in gun jeeps and doing area denial to harass stuff in the West, that makes total sense.
Right.
But so like the words actually matter to, do you understand what I'm asking you to do? So with regard to us, it didn't change from the plan too much. Circumstances change in a minute where it all kind of falls apart. But they just understood you're going to the north, you're going to infiltrate from Turkey, and I don't care that much about what you're going to do because it's going to go great for me in the South. I'm probably not going to need you, to be honest with you. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. Like, that's almost the attitude we were dealing with.
And that's partly why you had to establish a back channel, right, with the guys that were in country.
That's a little different, yeah, what you're talking about. So I've got my pilot team in country, and for whatever reason, as the way I say it, somebody between me, someone in the chain of command in the United States military, between me and my pilot team, is determining that they need to filter what those guys are sending me. So we had, I can't remember when it was, but I'm going to say it was probably December. One of the pilot team members had to be exfiltrated because literally his daughter was having emergency brain surgery. So his name is JC. He gets pulled out, and I'm aware of this. We know this because we know his family. So we're like, hey, can we speak to JC? And they're like, no, he's on a compartmented secret mission. I'm like, yeah, we all know that. Like, why are you talking to me like that? And we asked for about a week, and it was denied. And literally, JC is going back to the airfield to get reinserted. Like, let's say it's a Friday. He's going back at 3 o'clock to the airfield. About 1:30, we were like, okay, enough is enough. We're meeting JC at the airfield. And we didn't have permission to do that. We're just doing it. So I roll in, and I literally have a yellow pad, and I've got 100 questions. And I start going down the list of what's the answer to this? And he's like, we keep sending you. He goes, we sent you all of this. I'm like, JC, we haven't gotten any of this. So we answered 100 questions, which was like gold. Really, really important. And then we established a back channel, an unofficial back channel on the encrypted Iridium satellite phone to his team leader, Andy Grunland, that now we can talk. And we are finding out Andy is writing on the top of reports for Major Mark Grdovic, and they're not getting to me. And in some cases, the RFIs I'm getting answers to, I'm getting wrong answers.
You're getting wrong answers.
From official channels.
From the official channels.
So for an example, there's an airfield. There's 2 airfields in the north. Coincidentally, one in the KDP sector, one in my sector. Saddam built them during the Iran-Iraq war. Never had a plane land on them. They've never been used. So our plan is, hey, can we use these airfields? The official word comes down to through my channels that, no, your airfield is cratered. It's not serviceable. 100% wrong. 100% wrong. So now Andy is now sending me, my pilot team leader is now sending me surveys with pictures of the runway. It's fantastic.
Dude's out there sun tanning on it.
Yeah. So, so on that note, this is an example of what does the pilot team do for me? So we're working with the Air Force, and we're like, hey, are you guys going to be cool with us air landing MC-130s on these runways? And to my surprise, the Air Force was like, no. I was like, but I thought you guys are special ops. Like, I've heard stories you're going to land in the desert. They're like, no, we have to still survey them. I'm like, I've got guys on the ground. They survey them, and they determine that the thickness of the tarmac is not enough. It's Iraqi standards, not to American standards. So we're like, well, what would it take to land an American plane? They're like, you're going to need 1 more inch of tarmac or asphalt. So the pilot team coordinates with the Kurds, and they're like, who built this runway? And they're like, the guys in that house over there. It's like 3 kilometers from the runway. So they get a bag of money, and they go pay the family. What would it take to put 1 more inch of asphalt? Now, it is kind of funny to talk about. That guy must have been like, this is the greatest day of my life. Finally, the airfield I built 20 years ago, somebody wants me to pay me to put another inch of asphalt on it. And they do. And he's doing it with 1 truck and his son. So nobody's really noticing, that him and his dump truck and his, and his steamroller are just doing this little piece. That's how we got the airfield to be functional. And the same thing happened in Sam's area.
And just to point out to people, the way this was being handled, it defeats the purpose of the pilot team doctrinally, right? The pilot team's there to set everything up for you guys like they were doing with the airfield.
If I wasn't getting the information.
And pass that information back to you guys, and it's not their fault. It sounds like there's a commo breakdown.
You see it later in the story as things start to go badly, like unforeseen circumstances. Thank God I got the pilot team on the ground who can sort of broker that we're still on board with you, or, they can negotiate on my behalf and keep our alliance functional so that when I don't get to come in, when my main body doesn't get to come in, and I'm coming in weeks later than I expected, and we got to compress the timeline now, I can do that because the pilot team has done the preliminary work.
Tell us about getting the main body moved to forward staging in Romania.
Okay, yeah. So as I've alluded, what's amazing about this story, I think, besides that I think it's just an incredible story, and it is largely unknown. It has so many twists and pitfalls that make it sound like it's not feasible. Like, I told you what your mission is: create a second front in the north. And you're like, okay, that's okay. By the way, like I said, though, they're fighting each other recently in a civil war. There's all these problems, and we betrayed them previously. And like, okay. Oh, and also Turkey, where the forward staging base is going to be, just notified us that they're out. You're like, what do you mean they're out? We've been smuggling our gear to Turkey for 6 months. Sakür has been buying Land Rovers in Europe 6 at a time and smuggling them to Diyarbakir, Turkey, to stage on our airfield so we could drive across the Turkish border. Our plan was we were going to drive half the teams across the border and we're going to fly half the teams in with vehicles. All of our equipment, heavy equipment, our ammo resupply, all of our stuff is in Diyarbakir, Turkey. And the Turks are like, nah, we're out. Which is bad. Yeah, which is like, come on, man.
Yeah.
This is not like, we lost a weapon.
Right.
Like, this is kind of a huge hit.
Right.
And we're like, okay, so we got to come up with a different FSB and move all our equipment. No, they're not giving our stuff back too. I'm like, okay, that's a tough one.
Yeah. That's above my pay grade, right?
Well, like I'm prepared for things like we lost a weapon.
Right.
I'm not prepared for we lost the entire forward staging base and all of our equipment. That's a tough one to overcome. Sakür did some great last minute coordinations, and they were able to broker, hey, we've got Romania has agreed to stage us. And I always jokingly say, like, most people like Romania, I didn't realize Romania shared a border with Iraq. It does not. It's actually 1,000 miles farther away. So while it's super cool that we are in Romania, it's not exactly solving my problem.
Right.
So, like, what do we do from Romania? Right. And the issue, let me put it this way. At the time we get to Romania, we're late. It's like, it's either the end of February or the beginning of March. Like,
right before the invasion.
Yeah. Like we're
literally.
Everybody's freaking out because it feels like Saddam has brilliantly played his chess pieces to negate the entire northern front and fight the war he wants, a single front war. Uh-huh. Like, there's, as the guy who was watching Saddam's strategy, I do have some respect for. He played strategy very well. Uh-huh. Horrible person, but what he did with the pieces he had were freaking brilliant. So it appears that he has now broken an agreement that there is only going to be a one-front war. And we could be stuck yet again. And the guys are upset because there's kind of it's reminiscent of provide comfort. Like, we're going to be stuck just picking up the pieces if this war still happens. Saddam also then notifies the Kurds and says, hey, in a very Joker Batman-like fashion, there's room for one Kurdish faction in my future Iraq. Discuss amongst yourselves.
Right.
Here's a knife.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And
turns off the lights.
Not to hurt anybody's feelings, but like the KDP, the slightly stronger Kurdish faction, was like, we're interested.
Yeah.
The PUK, my group, was like, no, we're not. Like, my guys stood firm.
Yeah.
So like, and it makes sense. It's not because like they're one side's better than the other. The KDP was the larger faction. They have a stronger history relationship with negotiating with Saddam. Let's say the PUK was the weaker faction. So like they knew you guys have one road to success, and it's through the United States. So like they were all in 100% with us. So while we're in Romania freaking out, the Jasotov commander, Colonel Cleveland, comes up with an idea, and we see an opportunity to slip 6 ODAs and 1 B team across the border. There's sort of this like some diplomatic envoy that's going to go like right across the border and speak to the Kurds, like some EUCOM diplomatic thing. So we were able to convince the Turks that we're going to send a company of special forces as security. The company that gets tagged to do this is Major Pat Roberson, the captain, the former captain who was the last guy out in '96, and 6 ODAs, 3 from his company, or 3 from 3rd Battalion and 3 from 2nd Battalion. They cross the border. Some are on a bus, and some go out in rental cars. For whatever reason, the 6th team doesn't get across the border because they don't want to break up into rental cars, and there's a bit of an argument, and they get sent back to Romania. And the Turks kind of figure it out and seal the border. So now we've got 2 pilot teams, 1 from 2nd Battalion, 1 from 3rd Battalion, and the CIA folks, and we've got 5 ODAs and 1 B team. That is the force in country. And everybody else is in Romania freaking out that this is as far as we can go. So then one day, Cleveland says, hey, to shore the Kurds up, let's put in the 2 battalion commanders and the 2 operations officers, which would be, Tovo, myself, and my peers from 2nd Battalion. So we fly from Romania to Incirlik. You're smiling because
the story's great.
That's a crazy story. Yeah. There's things that you don't expect, or at least I didn't expect would happen. So like when we infiltrated to Incirlik, we're in civilian clothes. And it's to me it's a big one because Tovo had said to me right before we went in, "Are you bringing a rucksack?" And I was like, "No, there's no scenario where there's a rucksack on my back." I was like, "It's just not happening." I got a small go bag and a civilian-y looking kit bag, and the C-130 lands. We get off the ramp and the C-130 literally turns around and just takes off, and it's really weird because now the 4 of us are standing in the middle of this gigantic airfield and there's nobody around, and we don't know what to do, and here comes the little airport car, with the flashing light, and it's a golf car. It's got a Turkish private and an American private. And they pull up to us and they look at these 4 crazy civilians on the runway and they're like, where did you guys come from? And we have no cover story. We literally are like,
we're here for the war.
We don't know. So they put us in the car. They take us to the customs shack. They start immediately interrogating us, asking for our passports, our ID cards, whatever. They have them. A guy in the crowd shouts our name out. We assumed he was probably CIA. CIA support, logistician, whatever, and he
one of the runners.
Yeah, he basically just lifts the the barrier out of the way, grabs our passports off the scanners. The private's freaking out, and we walk out of to get in the car and leave. The next morning, we drive the 12-hour drive from Incirlik to the Iraqi border crossing, and the whole time we're doing this, we're like, oh, we're so getting arrested. We are so getting arrested at the Turkish border. So we're thinking they're either gonna confiscate our equipment and send us home, or they're gonna arrest us and confiscate our equipment. And then our main body from Romania is gonna infiltrate without us. That's what we're expecting is gonna happen. So we're at the border, and I'll just say the CIA logisticians with us do a fantastic job. They're gonna. It wasn't a plan that they're gonna distract the border guards, but they are getting into it with the border guards who are trying to search our bags. And there's an agreement that they wouldn't search our bags, but the Turks don't want to hear it, so they get into this big argument. While this argument's going on, it's a river with a bridge that crosses into Iraq. The pilot team from 2nd Battalion is there in their cars, and I know them.
On the other side.
Yeah, like 25 meters away,
waiting to receive. Yeah.
Yeah. So we walk around. I'm talking to them and what's going on? I'm like, it's not going well. They're going through our bags. They're kind of being jerks to us. And then I'm the one that said, hey, if they're going to confiscate our equipment, I'm not going to let them take my pistol and my encrypted radio. So I walk around my bag while they're arguing, and I take my stuff out. And I basically stick it under my shirt. When I did that, my 3 other colleagues were like, I'm going to do the same. So everybody did it. So we all stole our pistols back and our encrypted embedder radios. And then it kind of dawned on us. We're like, if we could steal our pistols and our radios, and I think maybe one of the 2nd Battalion guys said this, if you just grab your rucksacks and throw them in the car, they're not going to chase you. The Turks are not going to chase you into Iraq.
Right.
Because the Kurds will kill them. So I was like, good, go get the car. So they literally back the car up real slow. And the cars, by the way, are all weird American cars from the 70s. It's Oldsmobiles and stuff like that. So they back the cars up, open the trunk, and we grab our rucksacks and calmly, not freaking out, calmly just put them in the trunk. We get in, and we drive off 5 miles an hour. And we're like, we did it, we're in. Now, I heard later from some of my CIA counterparts that, the Turks freaked out. We're like, where are those other 4 guys? To which you're like, what 4 guys? And this is, unacceptable. So they sealed the border after that. And we all joked that our faces were going to be on the back of Turkish milk cartons. Have you seen these missing children? But that then starts the 3-hour drive from that border to 2nd Battalion's headquarters. Then we need to get to a place called the Painted Rocks, which is a checkpoint Charlie between the 2 Kurdish factions, where this team is now going to hand me off to Major Pat Roberson and the 3rd Battalion pilot team. And I will tell you, it was sporty because it's late at night or early in the morning, I suppose, 3 in the morning. And we link up, and I'm really happy to see Pat. I know Pat very well, and I'm like, hey, man, it's good to see you. And he immediately goes, we got to get out of here. I'm like, what's up? He goes, we never do this. And he goes, the longer we stay here, the more likely that somebody's going to take a shot at each other. So I'm like, okay. So we get in the cars with Pat, and his team, and now we drive another 2 to 3 hours to the PUK headquarters. Literally, the sun is coming up. We've been awake for the better part of 36 hours. And from our special forces training perspective, and now it's time for the first G Chief meeting. Action. And you're like, yeah, this is good. Let's do it. So and they're all like moderately well rested. Like they're up for, it's going to be a packed day. We got a full agenda for you today. And that's, we can get into it, but the next 72 hours is a whirlwind of education of, okay, we got in way later than we wanted. Let's make up for it by just working straight for the next 72 hours.
And you were like meeting with the Talibanis and
So yeah, my faction was led by Jalal Talabani, no relation to the Taliban, as I often joke that my mom was telling everybody that I worked in Iran with the Taliban. It's close. It's not exactly the same thing. They were great partners. The PUK, as far as I'm concerned, they were excited about working with us, and they were not the bad partners you're trained for in the Special Forces schoolhouse. They were accommodating. They were good fighters. They were well organized. They were squared away. They were a pleasure to work with, to be honest with you. And his son and his nephew were both fluent British accent English speakers. And there was two others that were also English speakers of his family circle. That was the glue that connected it all. Like Bafel Talabani, Jalal Talabani's son was probably the person I interfaced with the most, and Lahore Talabani. And they were those guys were worth gold.
Yeah, Lahore runs the intelligence service, I believe.
Yeah, there's some friction going on in Iraq right now.
That happens over there in that part of the world.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've heard him and Bafel are not on spectacular terms, unfortunately. But
sorry
I love both of those guys, and I owe those guys a tremendous amount. I think they're both fantastic individuals.
I just want to ask like one clarifying question. Did the U.S. ever get all that equipment from Turkey, or did Turkey?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a second. But like the main infill after the United States infilled the main body in a fairly dramatic fashion, Turkey quickly was like, my friend, what? There was no need for that. There was, because we basically, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a second, but a C-130 arrived in Turkey with a bunch of bullet holes in it. And Turkey quickly was like, there was no need for this. A misunderstanding. You could have flown over our airspace. All your equipment is right here too. It just makes more sense.
Right.
So they released everything. So our stuff now started to trickle into us late. Yeah, it was a little interesting.
And so let's talk a little bit about like what kind of the general scheme of maneuver is here, because you guys are having to deal with Halabja and supposedly a chemical weapons depot up in the north, but also with Saddam's forces. Like, how are you and Ken Tobo thinking our
Yeah, it's a
campaign
very important
plan?
piece that I didn't talk about. So as I jokingly talk about, like, this is your mission, there's a couple of problems. There's a couple of, snags. We've betrayed them multiple times before. They are in a fragile ceasefire of their civil war. Saddam is very capable. His equipment is outdated, but he's a capable, brutal dictator that knows how to crush rebellions. And I always joke with my pilot team. Again, Andy Grunland, my pilot team leader, as we were communicating, I was like, so how's it going? Are the PUK cool working with us? He's like, yeah, the good news and bad news. They're totally cool working with us. The bad news is their real focus is on this violent Islamic extremist element called Ansar al-Islam that has taken up refuge in the mountainous area to their rear along the Iranian-Iraqi border. It's affiliated with al-Qaeda. The United States had been keeping an eye on it because, we had intelligence, if you will, that this al-Qaeda affiliated group is experimenting with biological and chemical weapons. So there was an interest in this group. But now the issue is a little bit different, that they would love to work with us, but the problem is this group's in their rear area, and that's the majority of their forces are containing this area. To which we're like, okay, as it turns out, we don't like those guys either.
Right.
So, and we joke and was like, what's it going to take? I'm going to write a number on a piece of paper. What's it going to take to get you guys to go attack the Iraqis with me next week? And they're like, if you can help us, and this is what Andy and I joked about, where he's like, yeah, I just brokered a deal that, we're just going to help them conduct this daylight frontal attack in the mountains uphill to, against this entrenched fanatical enemy. As soon as we do that, they'll do what we want. I'm like, and it's funny to joke about, but like our attitude was almost like, okay.
But I mean, from their perspective too, like they don't have that's business as usual a lot of times.
It really is a legitimate negotiation. Like, hey, I'd like to help you, the United States, but I do have some other issues that are holding me back.
Right. So
we're like, okay, well, if we were to make those guys go away, would you be cool attacking the Iraqis? Now they're like, yes. I'm like, cool. So, Tovo, myself, we're all like, okay, this is what we just agreed to. And on top of all of that, there's this, and by the way, I don't know how fast we need to do this. And that's a really important point, because it's almost like, what do you mean? So many people have combat experience now. What they don't have is experience in an invasion. And that's a different animal. And I used to teach this quite a bit. When we're doing an invasion, if you think you're going to get the 5 Ws, like it's at 2 o'clock on Thursday, you're not getting that. It's not happening. If anybody's watched the movie The Longest Day, about the D-Day invasion, and you will notice that the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Commander don't know what day D-Day is. There are, they show John Wayne and the other guys arguing. 2-star generals will not know the dates of the invasion. So if you think, Special Forces Battalion is going to get the inside scoop of when the invasion is, you're not. So to recap, the mission you've given me is to create a second front that will tie up Saddam's forces in support of the American invasion from the south. And you're like, okay, cool. When do you need me to do this? Don't know. How fast do you need me to do it? Don't know. When are you going to put me in? Don't know. So there's a lot of don't knows. And that's cool. So that's when I joke, like the guys, the teams, we gave them the best information we could, but when we told them things that were very ambiguous, it is kind of fun to make fun of them that they were like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how much time you're going to have to do it. Okay. You might need to conduct that daylight frontal attack in the mountains like this week. All right.
And to make it a little more spicy, there were like, 2 other Islamist factions up in that area?
Yeah. I mean, there's actually a bunch of crazy weirdo groups along the border area, but this one is the main one that is a slightly different problem because it legitimately is affiliated with Al-Qaeda. Yeah, and what you're referring to, on their fringes, there's another group, the Islamic Group of Kurdistan, the IGK, and the Islamic, it was a 4-letter acronym, I can't remember the name of it now. There's 2 other crazy groups on their fringes that are also like just weird groups.
Do you think that Saddam knew about them? And
no, he did.
Didn't
I'm
care?
glad you asked that.
Or did he tolerate the tacitly allow them because they were putting pressure
100%.
on the Kurds?
So we knew, that's a great question. That's important in the context of this. We knew there's an intelligence officer from Saddam's, army embedded with them. I used to know his name. I can't remember what it was. We killed him in a strike. And I have no doubt, just like us, that dude doesn't look like an Iraqi. He's probably grown out a beard. He looks like an Al-Qaeda guy to build rapport. He will recite parts of the Quran that appeals to this group. Like he is playing this group and keeping Saddam abreast of. They're not getting out of control. They're staying in the Kurdish area. Maybe we're even giving them some money and guns because they are crippling the Kurds from uniting and being, and he's doing that. That's Saddam, like I said, it's a pretty smart thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
He hates this group. There's people asked me recently, like, was Saddam, in league with Al-Qaeda? Not even close.
Yeah.
Like Al-Qaeda hates Saddam more than they hate us. And Saddam hates them. But he sees an opportunity to leverage them, so he sends intelligence operatives that look like they're supportive of them, and they're all in. And then they also get to report back that, hey, these guys are doing okay. They're not getting off the reservation. So that's the way Saddam managed that. Saddam also, by the way, had a bounty on us, which was interesting to learn. And so you've got these intelligence operatives from Saddam's military, or the Fedayeen, and they are linking up with these crazy groups saying, hey, or they're actually spreading the word to Kurdish population members too. If anyone can kill an American, you will be rewarded. And I think I talked about it in the book. Boffel said to me one time, he told me about this, and our question was, well, how much, what's the reward? And he goes, they haven't said, but they said you will be able to live like a king. And for what it's worth, the day before I got there, the Kurds killed, the Peshmerga killed a group of people dressed like Peshmerga with fake IDs, trying to infiltrate our area. And I saw that happen later in Halabja, another group. You got to picture like the Halabja is the marshalling area for the big attack against Ansar al-Islam. You got 10,000 Kurds coming in here. So like nobody knows who anybody is. And if you sort of look like a guerrilla fighter, you're good. And they did still bust guys at checkpoints trying to infiltrate us, largely to kill us. That's a really interesting dynamic. And then Sam Faddis talked about in his book, they tried to trap some of the intelligence officers.
Hey, why don't you come to the Iraqi side? And Sam would be like, why don't you come to the Kurdish side?
Well, but they took fake pictures of dead Americans and pretended they were guys trying to claim the reward that I killed an American, operative.
Because Sam was the CIA guy in the north, and he was like playing this cat and mouse game with these Iraqi intelligence officers to the south of him.
So well, I'll let you ask.
So before we get into Viking Hammer, there's a couple other things I think we got to talk about if we're going roughly in order. The air campaign kicks off.
Yeah. So as I said, we got two pilot teams, 5 ODAs, and 1 B team, and now me and Tovo and my counterpart, battalion commander and ops officer in the 2nd Battalion area. We're not feeling good about this. This is not what we expect. Like, the force we have is too small. We have none of our equipment. All we got are our rucksacks and weapons that we carried in. We don't have the money we said we were going to bring in. Like, because we said we'll bring in $100,000. For whatever stupid reason, the money did not materialize in time for our infiltration. So, like, we're failing on every promise we've made to these guys. And they're being cool with us, but you can kind of see they're like, have we made a mistake? And like,
their bets.
and like literally, like General Colin Powell is talking at the UN saying Saddam has one more chance. You know, so you're like, this could all still really unravel. So we're trying to figure out, if there's only 37 of us here, what can we do? And it's really goofy because we're like, okay, one team will go do the Ansar attack. The other team will go attack the Green Line with the Kurds. You know, like, this is like the most bare bones, ridiculous plan. And then we find out on March 19th, the shock and awe campaign kicks off. And we, you know, it was a surprise. Like, we did not know it was kicking off tonight. Like, I think I actually saw it on the news.
Were they actioning targets that your guys had?
No. It had to do with Saddam had fired some rockets at the south, like into Kuwait, and the president gave the order, cross the berm now, let's go.
Okay.
So there was no extended air campaign like the Gulf War where they bombed for 30 days. It's
Didn't they fire, like, was it like 76 Tomahawks into your AO?
Oh, yeah. So we always knew part of my plan, that I don't have the forces here to do anyway, would include 64 cruise missiles to bombard the
Soften them up.
the Ansar area. So now when the air campaign kicked off, let's say tonight, and we're like, okay, it's on. Like, I guess, you know, we all get together and we're like, I guess we're doing this. Like, we're doing it with what we got. It is what it is. There's a story in the book where I talk about, let's say I acquired one AT-4. The CIA had an AT-4, and I'm like, can I have that? And then, you know, and they're like, yeah, I guess. And they're like, do you have some 5.56? I'm like, yeah, sure. Here's a can. So I give them a can of 5.56. They are like, yeah, take the AT-4. Like, what do we care? And I literally turned to ODA 082 and I'm like, here. And I said it sarcastically, here, go defend the Green Line. But I love it because they're like, Roger, boss. I'm like, one AT-4. Make it count. That speaks to the sort of mindset that we are. And we also then knew, we're like, if we don't use these cruise missiles, we're going to lose them. So while, yes, my plan was we will have 4 weeks of planning time with the Kurds, a week of air campaign. Let's take the cruise missiles tonight or tomorrow night. So we say we would like the cruise missile strikes tomorrow night. And we start getting target lists back that are totally different than the target list we'd sent up. And like we were looking at all the defenses, and it keeps coming back like 30 of the 64 cruise missiles are on the chemical facility of concern. And we're like, yeah, don't worry about that. It's a building. Like, one cruise missile will do it. Stop putting 30 cruise missiles on that. This goes back and forth multiple times, and somebody keeps changing our target list, and it's freaking us out. So one day we're going through the target list, and we quickly find out, we're like, what's this? And it's the PUK headquarters building in Halabja that somebody has targeted. So the night that the cruise missile strikes were going to happen, which, by the way, was Tovo's birthday, he is standing on the roof of the PUK headquarters in Halabja with his Blue Force tracker, like 60% confident that he's not going to, get a cruise missile to come down on him. And like we talked about this, like, okay, I'm going to stand way over here. Like, normally we were together, but like, we're going to separate tonight, for this reason. If this goes badly, and we're like, to the point where I even insisted that somebody, the guy was talking on the radio, like, what are your initials? What's your name? Because I'm telling you, we are concerned about this target. So the missiles came in. It was somewhat underwhelming. At that point in my life, I had not seen 64, and I didn't get to see them. I didn't get to see the 64 missiles, but I think we all had an idea it was going to be like super dramatic. And the reality is, from where Tovo is, it's like 10 miles away up in the mountain. So like, it sounded like grenades going off in the distance, but the Kurds loved it. So we're like, we did something. It was quantifiable, now what? And actually, the team that I sent with the AT-4 to the Green Line actually did some pretty good stuff. Driving up and down the Green Line, they actually did call some close air support. They got shot at too. They accidentally drew quite a lot of fire, which I only found that out like a year ago doing interviews for this book.
Accidentally?
No, they did.
Okay.
Like, no, they trust me. Their goal was to not get shot at.
Yeah.
And they're probing up to the Green Line, which doesn't have a lot of good terrain. And suddenly they start taking artillery and like, okay, they see us. And then they called some close air support. So that at least gave the Iraqis a sense of, okay, there's something on the green line now. It's not a free zone for them. So that's kind of the crappy position we found ourselves in. I will say too, because it's one of my favorite stories in the book. It's probably the most special forces thing I've ever seen. In this time period where we feel bad, it's not going well. We're like, it's just us. The other guys aren't coming in. We've let these guys down. We're not getting them the lethal aid. We're not getting them the money. We're not getting the close air support. 3 of my NCOs come to me and said, hey, would you be okay if we go out to the Kurdish front lines in the other direction to go? They want to go be seen by the Kurds because we feel like we've let them down in all respects. So I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. So they throw on Kurdish uniforms. They drive out to the area, and as it turns out, coincidentally, they're all 18 Bravos. One guy's a former mortar instructor. One guy's an 18 Bravo instructor, and the other guy was a former fire. In his previous life to SF, he was a fire direction control officer. So they want to go out there and they just want to be seen and talk to the Kurds and inspect their stuff. And when they get out there, the Kurds have some mortar tubes, but they don't really use them. They just kind of like eyeball it. And they talk about how like the tube is Russian, the sight on the tube is Chinese, and it's hose clamped on, and the ammunition is Iranian. And the Iranian ammunition has like extra cheese charges because they're all rotted. So like there's no sense of like, you don't really know what is propelling this charge. So they get out there and they see the enemy, and the enemy has been just hammering these guys because they have the high ground. So they make a question. They're like, hey, would you guys be okay if we shot at that enemy position? To which the Kurds, I think, must have been like, oh, check this out. The Americans are about to get killed. Yeah, by all means. So the 3 of these guys took control of the 82 millimeter mortar. They fired a round. And I think the Kurds were like, it doesn't go well. If you fire at them, they're going to shoot back. They fired a round. The enemy fired a round back. It landed. But I think the Kurds were very impressed because the guys, the way they handled it, very, very professional. And they acted like a mortar crew. Mm-hmm. And the Kurds hadn't really seen that before. So under fire, these guys, one guy's calling adjustments, left 200, whatnot. And they're doing adjustments, and they do the adjustments, and he's like, hang it. They fire a second round. Okay, it's closer, but it didn't hit. Second round comes in, and their round's getting closer. So now it's a gun battle of who's going to win. Well, we won. The third round, they hit their target. And this gun has been harassing this position for months, if not years. They just killed it. And the Kurds saw that, like, holy crap, the crazy 3 Americans all stood out there under fire and made adjustments and were able to kill the enemy gun before it killed them. So, like, I love these guys. I actually just saw one of these guys in Stuttgart last week. They come back that day, and in typical good SF fashion, like, okay, don't be mad. Let me just say everybody's okay. I'm like, what happened? And like, we killed some of the enemy today. And I was like, okay, tell me what happened. And they quite frankly, we were pretty happy to send that up. Like, hey, we had an engagement today with Ansar guys. We killed one of their gun crews. That's the first direct engagement we had like that. And as much as everything else has been falling apart, rapport, the Kurds were like, these dudes are legit. Yeah. They're fighters.
Yeah.
They do bring value even if all their equipment isn't here.
It's like a wild game of chicken mixed with cornhole.
But that's like the most special forces thing I've ever seen 3 guys
that's awesome.
do.
Yeah.
So tell us about the ugly baby infiltration, because while all of this is going on, you still have this issue of getting the main body in.
Right. So the group in Romania, again, it's Colonel Cleveland, legislative commander. Just like our cruise missile issue, he has 6 MC-130s allocated to him. But he kind of knows if I don't use them, they're going to get pulled soon. So we got to come up with something. So they come up with this insane plan. Let's fly the planes. And they had tried to cross the Turkish airspace multiple times, and F-16s turned them back. Like, they tried multiple nights in a row. So, like, let's fly the package to Jordan, and let's max the aircraft out with people. Like, it's just straight up ammunition and teams. And we're going to fly to Jordan, and then we're going to infiltrate from Jordan along the western long axis, crossing the enemy lines, which is really interesting because the enemy, there's several belts of enemy air defense that they're going to fly right over. And they're going to then infiltrate to the 2 airfields, KDP and PUK. Talking to one of the guys who was a team leader on the flight, it's funny that he said, when we got to Jordan, he goes, I just assumed like we had bombed the shit out of all of those air defenses and like seeded them all. And he goes, I had no idea that the plan was, no, we're just going to turn the lights off and fly real fast and low. And the seats were all ripped out of the plane, so it's pure ammunition cargo down.
It's just dudes and
like,
rocks.
It's like explosives, ammunition, rocket launchers, and dudes. And the 6 planes take off. 3 are supposed to come to my airfield. 3 are supposed to go to the KDP airfield. They cross the border, and it's actually one of my favorite chapters in the book because I think it's a pretty dramatic story. And what I was able to do that's interesting was I was able to get interviews from the air crews and the guys in the back. Because I've seen an article previously from the air crews, but this was fusing, this is what it was like for the crews, this is what it was like for the guys in the back. And it's pretty harrowing. And as the story goes, when they briefed it, General Franks, the CENTCOM commander, in his memoir says it was the hardest decision he had to make during the entire war, to let them do this. Because, the chances of this going catastrophically wrong were pretty good. But the chances of not doing it was the North was taken out as an option. So that's the risk versus gain. So they cross the Jordanian-Iraqi border. They go tactical. They're blacked out, and they are flying full speed as low as possible. And in some cases, I actually know, talking to one of the pilots years ago, one of the air crew, one of the onboard computers had them as low as 50 feet. Wow. Yeah. Talking to the crews, they start taking fire. And they're taking small arms fire. So they're screaming, take it up. They take it up. They start taking flak. They start taking flak. They take it down. So it's a constant up and down, up. And now these are MC-130s. Not taking fire, but evading enemy. This is what this aircraft was designed for. And they're largely staggered by about 20 minutes single file. And if it's a pretty dramatic thing. If you've seen an MC-130, a fairly large aircraft going full speed, it's significant. And you won't hear it unless you're in line with the direction. So like the pilots talked about seeing gunners' cigarette butts in their mouth. That's how low they were flying. One of the aircraft, all the aircraft took pretty significant fire. One of the aircraft took such fire that it became obvious that if they land this aircraft at the airfield, it's never leaving. And the airfield will then be crippled. So they made a decision. It's actually, I think it's the 6th aircraft in the convoy, if you will. They make a decision to do an emergency abort landing to Turkey. And that's pretty dramatic because they notify Turkish airspace.
Like, you can't land.
We're landing. And Turkey's like, denied. They're like, you don't get it. We're crashing in your country.
Yeah.
They land, I think it's at Incirlik. And when they land, fuel is just pouring out of the aircraft. And that's, like I said, when the Turks are like, oh my God, we may have misjudged the Americans' resolve on this. That was a 2nd Battalion aircraft that landed in Turkey. So 2 of the 2nd Battalion aircraft land in their sector, 3 of mine land in my sector. And this is probably the second most important point from my perspective about the plan. The way we talked about the plan, I refer to this as the decisive point, very militaristic. It's not my success, but it's the road to success. Meaning, if I'm successful in this event in my plan, Saddam's ability to stop me has just gone to minimal. Like today, if he I should point out, the place I'm with the Kurds is within rocket range of him. He can maneuver 5 kilometers forward and fire artillery on my position. There was one story where we talked about Iraqi jets.
Going in.
Well, yeah, but Iraqi jets also buzzing our position.
Yeah.
So like, if they wanted to kill us and they knew we were there, they could. But tonight, when I disperse my ODAs, and I've got about 13 of my 15 ODAs coming in, probably at 12 because I've already got 2 on the ground. There's like 1 ODA that didn't come in till later because for a weird reason. Once I disperse them, it's like a virus in a computer. Like you could kill me on the Kurdish compound, doesn't matter. My teams are all dispersed, and they know what to do. And this goes back to that isolation planning. Because of the way we lived in garrison with our teams, we trusted our teams. We treated them like subordinate commanders, not subordinates that I don't trust. We indoctrinated them with, you understand what I need you to do. And this is one of the most valuable lessons for anybody reading this book going forward in the future. If you ever want to exercise decentralized command and control, which we've always said is our thing, you've got to prepare your guys to do it. You can't just flip a switch when it's real. If you didn't raise them that way, to have a relationship where, of course, I trust you. And we did that. We did trust our guys a lot. So, and in the book, I like this story because like when the guys get off the back of the aircraft, I have vehicles that we have wrangled from the Kurds. They're not the vehicles we wanted, but it literally is, hey, listen. And, and I know the teams. I link up with the team. And they're glad to see me. They don't know where I've been for the last month, which is really cool. And I'm like, look, don't have time for this. I want to get you guys out of here. I don't want you to get artilleried. This guy doesn't speak English, but there was an English speaker here earlier today, and he's going to drive these cars to your guerrilla leader's location in, they all have different locations. And it's a guy's wife's car, like, a 78 Oldsmobile that belongs to his wife, which, by the way, like, these are real examples. And the Kurdish guy who gave me that car is like, please, this is my father-in-law's car. Please get it back to me. I'm like, Yeah, no problem. I promise you'll get this car back. And it'd be like a dump truck and a school bus. That's your 3 cars. I need you to get out of here. And I literally would be like, this piece of paper has my Iridium cell phone number on it. Call me when you can. And I love this because, again, it's not, why haven't you called me? Where's the daily sit rep?
Right.
There's times where teams, I didn't talk to teams for 2 or 3 days. Now, I can see them on Blue Force Tracker, so I kind of assume they're still alive. But I also know, like, a team might write to me and say something like NSTR. And if they say, which nothing significant to report, that doesn't mean there's nothing significant to report. That means they don't have time. And, you know, I wasn't like, then get on the radio and you better talk to me. I'm like, okay, you know, and I might shoot a message. Are you guys okay? And we could also communicate by satellite pagers we had at that time. But the point being was, it's their mission to run. They're not here to keep me informed.
Yeah, they were prepared to fight an unconventional war.
Yeah, truly. And like the power of this, like, Sanam, I got 15 prepared ODAs with their Peshmerga counterparts spread out over a 150-mile area. Good luck trying to stop me. And they all know what to do. They know to continue to be a threat to you. And now, when you say to somebody like, your mission is to continue to be a threat, that's an interesting thing, because I didn't tell you to attack this grid coordinate. I didn't tell you.
Right.
You have to think, well, what would be a threat today? Is it changing? So they all know, they all have pretty aggressive offensive orders to be as offensive as they can.
And not to interrupt, but it's such a change. I mean, for SF, for the conventional army, for everybody, from later in the war, when people would stand the jocks watching Kill TV, trying to micromanage what the teams were doing on the team.
And I go back to the issue of it. If you really want to exercise decentral command and control, it's really hard if you don't prepare for that and treat guys like that. And technology has made it where it's easier for a commander to not do that.
Yeah.
And like around 2003, 2004, we suddenly adopted that everything has to be done by ConOp now. And I'm not going to say that's not appropriate sometimes, but there are other scenarios where I'm the battle space owner. There's nothing wrong with me telling a subordinate, this is your piece of the battle space. You own it. Do you understand what to do in that battle space? To which they're like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know what you want me to do. And I'm like, okay, I trust you.
Right.
Hopefully you stay alive. I'll talk to you in a couple of days.
Right.
And they did. That's what made it so successful and powerful. I wasn't controlling these guys. They were fire and forget.
So let's talk about Operation Viking Hammer, this little wrinkle in the plan that you guys have to square away.
Yeah, no big deal. Like I said, it's just going to knock out a frontal attack in the mountains, uphill, daylight. Shouldn't be an issue.
There are how many prongs to the attack? There's
really 6 prongs, and that's the term they use, the axis of advance. So the plan is they're going to muster 10,000 Kurds. 4,000 are going to be in reserve, 6,000 are going to be the main effort, like 6 1,000-man columns. And we're going to put an ODA with each one of those. And if you could picture, for people who might not have a picture of what am I looking at for terrain? I think Iraq is a desert, right? This is the Rocky Mountain National Park. It looks exactly like the Rocky Mountain National Park. The actual Iranian-Iraq border is 8,000 feet. And that's where this battle sort of culminates. And the Ansar forces, yeah, they are actually at about like 4,000 to 6,000 feet. Like that's sort of where they're settled in. So these axes are going to each go up like a valley, if you will, and just clear as far as they can. The teams that are really, really good job, and like largely this part of the operation is under our C company, Major George Thebes, who later goes on to command the group as Colonel George Thebes. He's sort of overseeing this operation, and he's got 6 ODAs assigned to him. The teams it was really interesting because they didn't just go up the valleys. They sort of coordinated like, we'll go up the valleys, but somebody will be on the high ground and somebody will be on the low ground. So they could actually coordinate fire to each other, which proved to be super successful. Really, that made a huge difference. It kind of looks like it's 1,000 Kurds, all in pickup trucks. The first 100 of them are going to be dismounted, and they'll have an ODA with them. That's the way this is going to go. And they are going to fight for 12 hours uphill, picture like flat plains, rolling hills, pretty significant hills, then crazy hills, like crazy mountains. That's what the terrain looks like. And we're going to fight. The fight kicks off. As I said, all of this is being done way faster than we wanted. So, like, the teams have now infiltrated. We spread them out, except the ones that are going to go to Halabja. Like, we're all going to go to Halabja tomorrow. And we're like, okay, check it out. I know I told you you're going to have probably 4 weeks to prepare for this. Yeah, it's happening in 3 days. And the teams, again, are like, okay, got it. So when it does kick off, it kicks off surprisingly on time. A lot of people have asked me, were there really 10,000 Peshmerga? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not a doubt in my mind. Like, I could physically see 6,000 of them from my position. And the way to think of it, the 6 prongs, it's kind of separated like in 2 halves. Like there's a northern half and a southern half. The northern half is kind of focusing on get to this chemical facility of concern in what's called Sargat. The southern element is going after what we think is a foreign fighter terrorist training camp at a place called Dargash Khan, right on the Iranian border. That's really the 2 main objectives of advance. The battle goes shockingly well the first day. It culminates as it gets dark. And unfortunately, we're about 2 kilometers from the Iranian border when it starts to get dark. And so we sort of culminated for the day. One of my favorite crazy stories, like the
guy coming to see you at HQ.
So there was a team leader, a good team leader, and he's on the radio and he's talking to me and he's like, "Hey, the guy to my left just got killed by a sniper." I'm like, "Okay, all right, cool." Second later, he's like, "Hey, the guy to my right just got killed by a sniper," and his name's Steve. And I'm like, "Steve, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I think you should change positions, because I feel like I'm going to get another radio call in a minute that says, 'Hey, Steve was just killed by a sniper.'" So I'm talking to George Thebes, and I'm like, "Hey, I think we need to tell all the teams they need to start looking. They need to stop fighting and start looking for a defendable position to hold for the night while there's still like 20 minutes of twilight left." And that's the guidance that we give. Half hour later, we turn around and Steve Stoll is his name. Steve is standing behind me with a plate of like chicken and rice. And in my brain, I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, we came back down the mountain for chow. And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, no, it's okay. And I'm telling this exactly the way this happened. He's like, "It's okay. This is the way they do it. Nobody fights at night." I'm like, "What now?" And it's like, it's like a golf match where we've marked our positions, and we're just going to come back to it later. And everybody kind of agrees, like, yes, you keep like an LPOP at your final advance, and don't be an ass. Like everybody, don't like sneak 25 meters forward. Like stay where you marked it. Right. Everybody else comes back for chow, and then when the sun comes up, we'll all go back to those pre-marked positions and we'll resume the battle. That's the way, and a lot of it's because there's tons of minefields out there, so that's why nobody fights at night. A little freaked out by this. But okay, that's the local custom apparently. But as it turns out, this is the first day that, because Turkey's now opening up, AC-130s are now available. And we actually get a call on the radio from 4 AC-130s that are like, "Do you have any targets?" Again, literally as this is happening, one of my SOT-A, our signal intercept team guys, comes up and he's like, "Hey, we just intercepted a message. The enemy's all telling them this is the grid to muster at." So like that's where they're having chow. Now, to be fair, like if the enemy had AC-130s and they want to bomb me while I'm eating chow, that's fair game. I didn't agree that we wouldn't do that. But now that I have 4 AC-130s and I happen to know where they're having chow, and the AC-130s are like, "Do you have any targets?" I'm like, "As a matter of fact, I do." So like we told these 4 AC-130s, this is the enemy's rally point. I ended up sleeping in a water-filled bunker that night. I had a pretty bad night, but not as bad as them.
Yeah.
And I remember listening I could hear the AC-130s shooting. We were on like 20 minutes. There's like 5 of us. Tova was with me. I think George Thebes was with me. It's like 5 of us in this bunker filled with water. And it's bizarrely ridiculous. And we are rotating half-hour radio watches. Like, you wake the next guy up and hand on the radio.
Did the Kurds have any problem with that? Like you guys are breaking the rules here?
Honestly, I think they all went to sleep. They're like, if you guys want to monitor your box with the thing, that's your purview. But there's no point to it.
Right.
So it's like it's not quite the sun coming up. It's like that BMT, and we hear the AC-130 say, "Hey, we're out of rounds. We're pulling off." To which I'm like, "Holy crap! 4 AC-130s are out of rounds. It's been a bad night for the enemy."
Yeah.
So we wake up, and it's exactly like you would expect. We're like, "Oh man." We get our shit back together. Like, we're like, and Tovo's the one who goes, "Hey, let's drive up and link up with the lead. Let's go back. Like, if they're all going to drive up there, let's go with them and let's go see what's going on." So we actually join Steve's team. We drive back up to the forward advance, and sure enough, like the enemy is true to their word. Like if the enemy spent all night thinking, "Okay, we've got to make a break for the Iranian border," for whatever reason, they all agreed to not start running until the sun came up. And like we're literally pulling up in our cars, and we're like, "Oh my God, look at it! They're running. Like you can see them. They're running now, and they're running in like knee-deep snow." So, a firefight ensues. The guys are now shooting these guys, and it's a rout. as they are trying to flee across the Iranian border. Didn't go well for them, but that becomes like sort of the second day of that battle. The Kurdish forces, in guerrilla fashion, picked up tons of weapons off the battlefield, and they are fired up. Because you got to really understand too, like this went way better than I could have possibly even imagined it would. But this is a historic area for the Kurds. This is the spot where Saddam, did the great chemical attack of Halabja that killed 5,000 civilians in 1988. So there's a tremendous emotion to this area. The fact that they've retaken it is an unbelievable victory for them. So like, we made good on our word, and they are not hesitating at all. They're like, oh, we are all in with you. Saddam is next. Yeah. So of the 10,000, 9,000 of them pick up weapons and they turn around with us, and they are, the motivation is palpable. Like you can feel we are liberating the Kurds from Saddam. Let's go. So the other teams that I had on the Green Line at this point now receive these 9,000 well-armed guys, and they're all like, these Americans are incredible. They love to fight. They're like, our reputation is top-notch. Rapport is just solid. And now it's time for the Green Line fight. And from my perspective, I'm like, okay, I actually can't believe this is working. Like, I can't believe we're still on our timeline. Like, the Americans got bogged down on a sandstorm. Because if you had asked somebody 3 weeks ago, they're like, it's going to take us like 4 days to get to Baghdad. So we're like, our shit's not going to be of value. Well, it didn't take Americans 4 days. It took them 2 weeks. So the Americans haven't reached Baghdad yet. So we're like, okay, there's still the expiration date is not passed for us to tie up Saddam's forces, which are still on the Green Line. Let's go. So now we start the final phase of the Green Line fight.
Can I ask you one quick question about the terrorists? I assume that they were Salafists, right? Of some sort. How did they what did they do in Iran? They couldn't have been welcome there.
That was interesting, actually. Yeah, there's a bit about that.
I forgot about that. Iran is like everybody else. You see this in Afghanistan with Pakistan too. It's an alliance of convenience, and having a buffer of crazies between you and the thing that is Iraq, totally permissible. So Iran will support this crazy Sunni fundamentalist group because it's going to create a buffer.
Okay.
But they will also, just like the Iraqi intelligence agencies, keep them, limited.
Right.
There was, you're probably referencing it. There was one time we did watch Iranian helicopters drop off ammunition. And two things I do want to mention, because I didn't talk about the Viking hammer thing. So the guys did reach the chemical facility. We did find tons of stuff. And people will ask me, well, isn't that has no relation to Saddam? This is an isolated incident. We did find evidence of hydrogen sulfide. We found formulas for VX agent, protective. Like, we found tons of stuff that they were doing, tests with this. The Dargash Khan training camp, this is an awkward one. So when the guys approaching that training camp, they got to the high ground and they got eyes on the training camp. And again, I thought, oh my God, we got them. I can't believe we're pulling this off. The guys are reporting like they're still in the training camp. They're loading up trucks they haven't evacuated. We got into an argument with the B-52 and a misunderstanding about the rules of engagement. And the B-52 was convinced they couldn't drop ordnance within 5 kilometers of the border. I got into a huge argument with them. I'm telling them they're totally wrong. That's not what the rules of engagement for CENTCOM are. The rules of engagement were actually very, very liberal. But the whole time this argument's happening, the team is reporting they're loading onto 20 trucks and they're driving the 1 kilometer across the area. So we lost them.
Right.
And I always explain this. At the time, I didn't know his name. Colin Powell mentioned Zarqawi's name like 20 sometimes in his UN speech, that there's this Jordanian Al-Qaeda affiliated guy. And at that time in my life, it's just another Arabic name. I don't know who he is. If Zarqawi was there, it's highly likely he was at this site and we lost him. For anybody who doesn't understand the significance of that, Zarqawi comes back into Iraq at some point and creates the thing that becomes Al-Qaeda in Iraq, AQI. AQI then turns into the thing that is now ISIS. So it's, that analogy of, for loss of a nail, we lost the shoe, for loss of the, it's kind of like that. So it was a really painful opportunity that we lost there. But for my plan, as much as I wanted to get him and do the other things, getting the Kurds to turn toward the Green Line on time was actually my primary function.
Right.
And so both the CIA and the Special Forces turn towards the Iraqi army at this point. And there's some other things that happen in the middle of all this. Third group comes into your AO, stirs things up a bit, and 173rd jumps in.
Yeah. And to give, I'll say, third group was given to the Jasodov as the roundup battalion because we couldn't get 110 because they belonged to UCOM, and that was a clunky relationship. I'll throw stones at the third guys. They would throw stones back at us that we didn't welcome them well. And that's a fair statement. Like, it was not a good relationship. We didn't understand their capabilities. They didn't communicate well with us. We're at Fort Carson. They're at Fort Bragg. It was not a good fit. And they didn't get clear mission guidance as what should we do with them. They should have actually been put out in the Western Desert, very much like 5th Group was doing south of the Euphrates, like past the Jordanian border. They should have been doing the same thing in the Al Jazeera Syrian border desert, but they weren't used that way, and that's where they would have been valuable. Some of them got pushed my way, and in this, I tell the stories like they were not particularly useful trying to link up with me in the Halabja fight because they just didn't. I didn't want guys who just wanted to shoot. Like they didn't know who was who. They hadn't planned for this, and it wasn't a good relationship. They did have a company of 3rd of the 3rd assigned to 2nd Battalion under Fred Dumar. They did great. They did a great job with his guys. So like, if somebody reads this and they think that I'm poking fun at 3rd of the 3rd, 3rd of the 3rd was bumpy with me, but some of them did really, really good stuff. The 173rd. The 173rd jumps in, I feel like it's as late as the 28th. We had gone to Italy to coordinate with them.
They're out of Vicenza, right?
Yeah,
The 173rd Airborne
Northern
Unit.
Italy, right.
Like the European Strike Force. Yeah.
Great unit.
Yeah.
Fantastic unit. Not their finest hour. And I'm sorry, people get upset when I say that. Like, hey, they're a great unit. I think very highly of them. And they did spectacular things later in the war and in Afghanistan. This was not their greatest moment. We tried to coordinate with them in Italy. They didn't want to work with us. They were very, very confrontational because they were arguing about we should be in charge, you should be in charge, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Now that they jumped in, and jumping in was valid. Jumping in is you can unload aircraft faster. It's safer for the aircraft. There's nothing wrong with their jump. But their jump was 40 kilometers from the Green Line. So like 2nd Battalion, they jumped on the 2nd Battalion's airfield. Completely safe. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Like, if you don't have to jump on top of enemy, you shouldn't. The problem was once they jumped, they refused to leave that airfield. And that airfield was not in danger of being lost. Like they were insistent that we must hold this airfield. I'm like, the Kurds have the airfield. It's not going anywhere. The purpose of the jump was to bring in what's called the MERC, the Medium Response Reaction Company, out of Savannah. It's 4 M1s and I think like 11 M113s. So we're going to bring a mechanized company task force in, and that's the reason for the jump. Could you have landed it? Yeah, you probably could have, because we had already landed stuff on the airfield. But that's not neither here nor there. Again, it's that they wouldn't leave the airfield. So when they brought in the mechanized equipment, we suggested go down this highway. There was a massive highway that goes right into Kirkuk. They didn't take our advice. They started to drive through mountain passes. Their vehicles broke down, got stuck. And I can say with 100% certainty, none of their vehicles or their soldiers got into the fight. Like people have told me, oh, you don't know, but I'm positive. There's no way I'm wrong about that. Because I received them after Kirkuk was seized about 24 hours later. Like I'm the guy that received them on the road to bring them into the city and put them on the airfield. Great soldiers. It's just, I think their commander was still exercising a lot of pre-9/11 risk-averse mindset of moving too slowly. And I get that. I don't like it, but I get it. So that was really the 173rd's role.
And you mentioned the capturing of Kirkuk, and that was kind of an issue too. Like, wasn't there a time where the army wanted you to like abandon the city and you're...
So as we're now focused toward Kirkuk, which is the main city in the north in my sector, we're getting weird responses from CENTCOM like, hey, you can't cross the Green Line, which is really, really weird because I'm like, what did you want me to do? Like all the Iraqis,
it's an invasion, right?
All the Iraqis are on the other side of the Green Line. And to be fair, like this is one of these things where words matter, and CENTCOM and even later the Army's official history of this depicted like your mission was to work with the Kurds. I'm like, no, my mission was not to work with the Kurds. My mission was to threaten Saddam.
Right.
So there's like, it sounds like a nuance, but it's actually really important. And this is why I also harp on, like in planning, particularly in special forces circles, you can't say things like your mission is to conduct unconventional warfare. That's not a mission. That's a type of operation. It's a method, perhaps. My mission was to tie up the Kurds.
Right.
My method, or not tie up the Kurds, tie up the Iraqis. Yeah. My method is using the Kurds through unconventional warfare.
Yeah, the commander's intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Otherwise, what are you doing? You're like hanging out on the other
right,
side.
right. What happens is
Yeah.
if you adopted a mindset of my mission is to conduct unconventional warfare, and you just stay there and hang out with the Kurds,
Yeah, do
you're like,
JSET, yeah.
You're like, I'm mission success.
Yeah.
Did you accomplish something in the context of a strategy? The answer is no.
Yeah.
So let's just say we're able to adapt because we really have it clear in our minds. What do I have to do? So with what's going on, and the Americans are kind of bogged down in the South. There's some things going on, like convoys are getting ambushed, sandstorms. So like, I don't think so. And we had been trying hard to get the Iraqis to surrender. And again, Saddam employed his AR from the Gulf War. He did some really innovative stuff to mitigate the likelihood of surrenders. And we hadn't anticipated that. We assumed, just like the Gulf War, everybody's going to surrender. I think this is really pretty incredible. He put the word out that, hey, I just want to let you guys know, if anybody surrenders, I'm killing your entire extended family and your neighbors and everybody else. Also, by the way, everybody get up, take the chair to your left. That's your new division. So like if you had any schemes with your officers to when the time comes where he literally switched division commanders at a staff meeting. So like, General Aziz went to the meeting and General Khalil came back. So like the chaos, but the control, like he broke every scheme.
Right.
So we weren't getting a response to our message that we were pumping through the underground. It was really, really weird. So now we're starting to get the sense of, hey, I don't think Saddam's getting our message that you should not go south. And I like to use those words because, again, CENTCOM didn't fully appreciate. I can't force Saddam from not going south. I have to compel him to not go south. I like to explain this because, like, okay, this is Kirkuk. This is the Green Line. I'm here. I want to force him to not go south. How do I do that from here? And people are like, you just attack him. I'm like, that doesn't prevent these forces from repositioning if he's tying me up with these forces. So I have to compel him that it's not in his interest. How do I do that? And I go back, it was my epiphany. It's not through killing his forces. Saddam's totally comfortable with me killing his forces.
Right.
Like, his forces are expendable.
Right.
His cities, that's something he needs because the cities have the oil infrastructure. So I always said this, I think Saddam's plan was bloody the American, like make it a one-front war, bloody the Americans in the South because the Americans don't have the stomach for combat, which was the myth of the 90s. And then the Americans will culminate somewhere, maybe south of Baghdad, maybe north of Baghdad, and then I'll pull back to Tikrit. I'll still be in charge of the reduced size Iraq, and then I'll broker a ceasefire with the Americans and I'll still be in charge. Right. That's his plan. Right. It's a good plan.
Yeah.
And it requires him to, like I said, bloody the Americans. So that's what I'm trying to thwart. So it seems like he's not getting my message that we're taking it seriously. So we all agree, okay, need to take the cities. And I think that's where, the Turks suddenly like, what are you talking about? You can't take Kirkuk. And even CENTCOM was like, don't take Kirkuk. You're like, guys. And I used to joke that CENTCOM would be like, hey, that's a terrible idea. Then the Americans would start having trouble in the South. And they're like, hey, I heard you say something about taking Kirkuk. That's intriguing. And we're like, yeah, we could. And then it would go really badly. And they're like, take Kirkuk now. Take Kirkuk now. That's the progression of how it went. So from our perspective, taking the cities is the thing that will force Saddam to stay here.
Right.
And to do that, it's not just about attacking his forces. I have to be holistic. And this is really cool because the Kurds are like, well, do you want us to tell you how we normally do it? We're like, yeah, I would love to hear that. And they're like, well, I've only attacked Kirkuk twice. My dad, he's attacked it 3 times. So they brought in what we jokingly called the old Peshmerga, which was cool as hell. Because it's dudes in old pickle suits who are probably like 70 years old, and they got all these maps under their arms. And when they came in and they rolled the maps out, this is where I'm now seeing the power of the underground. They have professionally, graphically mapped every freaking Iraqi position in the entire city. Wow. And it's accurate. And it's coming to us from their underground networks. It's freaking brilliant. So they're like, okay, the first way we normally do it, we cut the highway south of Kirkuk, 30 miles south in a place called Tuz. Then we surround it on as many sides as we can. And this is what we did. We cut the main north-south highway. We had 3 ODAs. Yeah, 3 ODAs, each with about 1,000 Kurds, attack from different angles, sort of from the north, sort of from the east, and sort of from the south. I couldn't get a team on the backside. And we were planning on flying a team with a MH-53 tonight with some Arabic-speaking Kurds on ATVs and our team. and we were going to ride around, just blow some stuff up, dump out parachutes out of the pack trays, and make a lot of noise that would make the enemy think there's paratroopers to your rear. Kirkuk collapsed before we could implement that. But still, we surrounded it on multiple sides, and this is potentially my favorite part of this. Mostly through the CIA, we had a lot of subversive activity going on to compel the enemy their situation was hopeless. And I say this is a really important lesson, the power of this. Killing someone is fairly black and white, but tricking them that their situation is hopeless, like the power of that ability, I now appreciate it. And it's funny because I had read commanders from World War II talk about this, and I just thought it was like, oh yeah, that's a hat tip to the PSYOPs guys. The power of this cannot be overstated. So there's a lot more to that I'm not getting into in this just because of the time, but like we were bombarding the Iraqis with a whole series of exaggerated, not really accurate messages to make them think their situation is hopeless. We paid underground members essentially to facilitate graffiti in certain neighborhoods. We smuggled guns into underground places. We warned, again, through the underground, we warned them to don't conduct human rights violations. Do not blow up oil infrastructure. We know who you are. we might know who you are, but that's not really relevant.
Well, I mean, there's that mystique almost all over the world
where
the Americans know everything.
Well, and also the Kurds. Like the fear of guerrillas is palpable.
Yeah,
it's interesting because like the fear of air power is black and white. They're terrified of it.
Yeah.
But like there is a mystique of these freaking guerrillas appear to be around every corner.
Right.
And like there's a really crazy story when we first met Talabani. Jalal Talabani and his commanders, if you will. They presented Tovo with a pistol as a gesture of our relationship. It's the guys who were here. We'd all be laughing. So like, I'd like to give you this pistol as a gift. We're like, and we're like, that's really nice of you. Could you stop freaking pointing it at me? Like this pistol, this is one of Saddam's elite members' pistol. It's a gift, and I would like to give it to you.
You want to see me cock the hammer?
Well, no, it had a Saddam's specific like engraving marking on it. It's his elite forces, and they hand it to us. And as soon as they hand it to it, Tovo hands it to me. And like now we're a little bit apart, so they can't hear us. They hand me the pistol, and we both look at each other, and I just kind of did a check. I'm like, oh yeah, it's loaded. And that was interesting too because we both noted, yeah, and I'll bet the guy who loaded that pistol that morning, his day didn't go like he expected. Like that bullet that's in there was loaded by the Iraqi commander that they got this from. Like no one between us and them has even thought to clear this weapon, and we're like, okay, cool. So that weapon went into the system. We never saw it. We actually declared it into the American system. Never saw it again.
Crazy.
But the fact that the Kurds they sneak up to the Iraqi lines from time to time and they do kill guys and come back with a pistol. And there was one particular group of Kurds that were like the elite. They called them the Cobras. And like they were doing stuff where they were coming back every night and they would ask the ODA, like, do you guys want to go with us? And I wouldn't let the ODA necessarily go up on this crazy stuff with them. And they'd come back and two guys would be like, check out these pistols we got last night. And you just knew, oh yeah, that didn't go well for the guys who own those pistols.
Yeah.
So that fear of the Peshmerga as capable fighters is out there. The subversive efforts, like I said, we're telling them don't conduct crimes. We know who you are. You will be held accountable. And we're also telling the enlisted, hey, have you seen your officers lately? I'll bet you haven't because they've all abandoned you. So why are you defending these positions? Like we really put a lot into that with the attacks, and it had the effect that we wanted. Where on the morning of April 10th, like things, it imploded. Like Kirkuk was collapsing.
Did they surrender? Did they like put down their weapons to try and like hide?
No, they ran.
They ran.
They deserted. And like I said, that's stupid that we didn't think about that. Like we thought they'll fight or they'll surrender. We hadn't considered they'll desert and run to Syria, or like the previous Iraqi town and then to Syria. And that was option 3. That's what they did. If you had a family place to run to, you did. So the prisoners that we were wrapping up were all foreign fighters, like really stupid young men that came to Iraq to fight the great Americans from Lebanon, from Syria,
Yemen, probably.
Yeah. I mean, really, and we're like, oh, that's really funny. Like, none of you guys seem to be from Iraq. Yeah. And they all had the same totally ridiculous cover story. They all had the same cover story. They were here to find work in the chocolate factory. Like, that made no sense. But that's like, how did you find your way to Iraq?
Yeah, right.
Like, they didn't want to say they came to Iraq for the jihad. Right. They came here for work in the chocolate factory and then got drafted.
Right.
As one does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so we were aware that the majority of Iraqis in uniform that we didn't kill shed their uniforms and ran, fled.
Right.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And there was this like interesting moment where it seemed like you guys understood that you have to get like civil infrastructure up and running. Like you got the electrical grid like 70% up. That was kind of a fun story.
So if anybody ever takes a city, it's weird because you think about the fighting, and then okay, we have it, and it's still chaotic. Like things are always on fire. Like there's no electricity, things are on fire. People seem to be running around. They're shooting. There's always tracers going into the air. So you don't know like what the hell's going on here. It's very Escape from New York. Like that's the way we described it. The sun comes up, and the Kurds were super sharp, like the Kurds. They were prepared for this. So they like suddenly bring in 400 uniformed, unarmed police officers. They look like road guard, like guys in white spats, white helmet, white plastic helmet, and a road guard vest, and like gloves. And they are at every intersection because the streetlights aren't working. And I got to tell you, like I would never have thought about that. And you're like, huh? Commerce seems to be working. People are selling stuff. People are going to work because these 400 guys are on street corners. They brought in buses from Suleimania all the way into Kirkuk. Like they were prepared for this. They brought in like 50 buses so that the
Like
bus,
public transportation?
Yeah. So like buses are still running. Crowds are all pissed off now. Everybody wants to come and bring their grievances to me.
Right.
You're the mayor.
The
of
big
Kurdish.
chief, yeah.
No, because we set up at the governor's building. So like de facto, we are the rule of law. We are the government.
And you'll listen to them where the previous government probably didn't.
Right. So like people were cool. They're going to give you a chance. And, it does kind of suck because they're like, okay, what's your deal? And like, he killed my donkey 7 years ago. I want him killed. You're like, I'm going to put that on the list. And like some of the things were just nonsensical, but some of them are not. And the crowd is out all yelling at us. They're screaming. And there's a guy shaking a ring of keys that looks like a school janitor. He's got like 10,000 keys on this ring. And we're like, what's that dude's deal? So we call this guy forward and he goes, I am the manager of the power plant. We need to go now. And he's explaining, because if we don't go, they're going to loot it. And a comment about looting. We look at looting like, well, lesser people would loot things. Okay. Looting is an ugly word. Salvaging is a better word. People who have nothing, like, metal wiring is valuable.
Yeah, they pull all the copper wiring out of the walls. That's
or like, there's a
really
bunch
good,
of bricks that are broken in the street here from the bomb that fell. And if I'm picking up the bricks that aren't all cracked up and you're like, he's looting the bricks, maybe. Or he's taking the bricks.
Yeah.
So people are taking everything they can, and there is a cultural aspect here that people feel they owe reparations. So they're going to just take stuff. And he's like, we got to get to the power plant. So like I sent 4 guys, and we did a lot of that where I would love to have sent a company. I don't have a company to send. So I'm like, hey, you 2 guys, what are you guys doing? Go with this guy that I just met a minute ago. I have no idea who he is. Go with him to the power plant. And we did a lot of that kind of stuff. They go to this power plant, and it's like some ridiculous Roadrunner old cartoon where it's like a freaking switch where he's like, and when he does it, power comes back on to 70% of the city. And like me and Major Pat Roberson, we talked about this. Like when that happened, and it sounds stupid to say this, but you could feel that everyone's like, and the Americans, we will strike them to the power's back on. And you're like, what the hell just happened? And everybody now, they can sell stuff, they can still go to work. Like the desire to fight like just dissipated. It was freaking weird as hell because when the power goes on, the water starts running. When the water's flowing, people can live normal lives. And there's commerce and there's buses and there's police officers. So there was tons of that. Like get the basic services running and the desire for stupid instability kind of dissipates.
Yeah.
And then we got word from CENTCOM to take down the American flags. We're not occupiers. To which again, we're like, what?
Right.
And I remember Tova, when he came to me, he's like, we need to take the flag down. I'm like, what do you mean we need to take the flag down? He's like, we just got word that we can't be occupiers. We need to take the flags down. And we're freaked out because I'm like, if we take the flag down, this place is going to turn into crazy town.
Right.
And to be fair, like we took the flag down and people in the streets were like literally looking at us like,
you're leaving.
Is it okay if I take this now? And I'm like, I guess it is, Yeah. And that's when it sort of started to devolve a little bit. And Baghdad had it worse, much worse than we did in terms of people went crazy because we're like, hey, we are not in charge. I just want to be clear about that. We are not in charge. You're like, they really wanted us to be in charge. If we had brokered, here's the rules. That's all they wanted. You know, and if like it's a grace period. You said here's the rules. All right, whatever. I don't really like you, but you said that. If you get the power running and you get the water running, you get to be in charge. I don't really care. Like that's what they wanted.
We've talked about this before on the show because you look at like America's efforts in Japan and Germany post World War II and things like that, and during the GWOT there was such this like we don't want to be occupiers. It's like yeah, but if you break it, you buy it.
So I did talk about this in the book. There was a plan. We had a fairly reasonable, structured plan for how we were going to do this. Like my 3 company commanders. I had one of them was going to be the liaison to the governor, whoever the governor was. One of them was going to be the liaison to the 1st Iraqi Corps, and the other one was going to be the liaison to the 2nd Iraqi Corps. Like we knew how we were going to transition. There was an organization called ORHA, the Office of Reconstruction and Humanitarian Assistance, a bunch of retired military generals who were brilliant. They really knew what they were doing. We met with them, and I was really enamored because they knew all the names of the cities, they knew all the names of the people. And I was like, this is coming together. And then the next day, we got told, hey, Secretary Rumsfeld just threw them out of country. They need to go. Because he was having an issue between him and the State Department. This was a State Department initiative. And we're like, okay, so what's the plan? Department of Defense is going to run Reconstruction. We're like, okay, what's the plan? We don't know yet. But we do know we're throwing those State Department guys out. And like those State Department guys had a good plan. And that's the kind of stuff you just watch this unravel. You're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And around this time also, was it 4th ID? There's this issue with like surrendering, the Iraqi unit surrendering, and they wanted to attack anyway.
So we took Kirkuk, we brought the 173rd in. It took about 8 days to hand Kirkuk off to the 173rd. And then we left Kirkuk. And the Kurds were like, what's next? What's next? We're like, we're keep going south. So like C Company was now pushing farther south. And they were making it about as far south as Bakuba, a place called Mandolin. And they bumped into a thing called the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq, which is really weird to explain what this thing is. It's a
weird cult.
Yeah, it's a dissident elite Iranian unit that fled Iran after the fall of the Shah in 1979, and they found a home in Iraq, which is super weird, considering the history of the Iran-Iraq war, but they hate the Iranian revolution. These guys are fanatics for like the pure Iran. So they found a home with Saddam. They have no ethnic ties to the Arab community. The Arab community actually hates them. So Saddam was able to leverage them as a reserve. Like if Saddam used his Republican Guard to keep an eye on the army, he used the MEK to keep an eye on his Republican Guard. And they were very well trained and very well outfitted. So we bumped into them. They were like the last unit we bumped into. We had a little bit of an exchange. They actually created some casualties on our part, minor casualties from artillery. And then they said, hey, we've been trying to contact you guys. We want to surrender. And we thought that was, bullshit when they said that. But like, no, we contacted two American politicians 6 months ago and said, we want to fight for your side. We looked into it. It confirmed it was true. Information that would have been useful to know.
Right.
So now it's all cool. We're going to have the tea. We got some food going. They're weird as hell, but they seem okay. And they're like, hey, we'd like to bring something up. We would like the honor of being the spearhead into Iran.
Yeah.
We're like, let's put a pin in that one for now.
Yeah.
That's not really on the table now.
They are
fanatics.
They are the Iranian regime's like number one target.
Yeah. They are
like
fanatics.
they're serious players.
And now we are also, by the way, dealing with like elements of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are crossing the border, sneaking into Iraq to attack these guys. Like it's crazy. 4th ID now, God bless them, have now made it into country. They were supposed to come through Turkey and that got turned off. They've now arrived into our sector. And when they arrive, it's like you can almost picture like the SF guy comes walking, he's like, hey, everybody relax. It's cool. They surrendered.
Yeah.
And, God bless them. The 4th ID was not happy with us. And again, they were like...
They came to war.
Well, there was almost like, USF guys ruin everything.
That's funny.
And, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not funny. They were like, get out of the way. We're opening fire. And we're like, you can't open fire. And like, if there's a stereotype about us ruining everything, like we literally like, look, they signed this agreement and it specifically says here, this is a real thing. if we're going to attack them, we need to give them 24 hours notice so they can disperse. And they're like, unbelievable. You guys, we're like, that's the rules we agreed to. It got so bad, it got to a point where we eventually told our teams, I need you to pull out of the camp. I'm not comfortable. I think these guys are going to open fire whether we're in there or not. They didn't, but we got really, really nervous.
Yeah.
Eventually, we were able to like tone it down. We bring them in, and then we're like, okay, it's really cool you didn't kill these guys. They're your problem now. And that's about where it started. That was the last fighting, for the most part of the war. Like there was some skirmishes, but like that was the real last strong because Tikrit was kind of falling at this same time period. And that's really where we transitioned into now pure stability efforts.
Yeah, so speaking of which, our government's brilliant transition demobilization plan post-war.
Debathification.
Tell us about the Peshmerga monitoring operations.
Yeah, so this gets into a really weird part of the plan where we're like sort of ad-libbing it, if you will. And somebody at the group came up with the idea of, hey, the next phase of this should be Peshmerga monitoring operations, which I was like, what? Like, we're going to put the Peshmerga into camps and we're going to monitor them. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because as I was telling you before we started, we're still getting tons of tips where Saddam is. By the way, we got 100 tips where Saddam is. Some of them were accurate. Like we learned later, we actually, amidst the 100 tips we got, we actually did get, this one's correct. We got tons of tips of where weapons of mass destruction may be buried or not. But like, we are now not able to run these to ground because someone's saying we need to monitor the Peshmerga, which was super weird. Like, why would we monitor the Peshmerga? They're great. They were our key allies. Along the same time period, we get introduced to an entity called the Free Iraqi Forces, which was really interesting.
That was Shalabi's guys, right?
Yeah. Which was really interesting to meet someone. Like, there's an American colonel from the Department of Defense, from the Pentagon. There's some weird American who used to be State Department who's now wearing camouflage. That's really weird. Mm-hmm. And this individual called Ahmed Shalabi, who's sort of everybody knows he's a con man. CIA sort of, put him on notice years ago as persona non grata, but now DOD thinks this guy knows things. Mm-hmm. And the CIA is at a loss. They're like, this guy's a complete liar. He's going to take you for a ride. And Department of Defense is like, no, he's our guy. So they introduce us all together, and they've got some guys with them with patches in English that say FIF. And we're like, what's up with this? And like, oh, these are the Free Iraqi Forces. We're like, what do you mean? And like, these are the resistance. And they're 100% shitty mercenaries that Shalabi is paying with money that the U.S. is giving him to create an Iraqi face. To the point, like even the American colonel that I'm now meeting, he goes, well, the Pentagon, we determined we wanted to put an Iraqi face on this conflict. I'm like, okay, just to be clear, I got 50,000 Kurdish Peshmerga that are Iraqis, just to be clear about that. And they're like, we didn't know that. We weren't aware of that. And I'm like, how many of these FIF guys do you have? And they're like, 500. And they are all just...
Well, do they... Because Shalabi, he lived like in Virginia. Like he came from the States. Yeah. Did the FIF guys come from the States too?
Well, they rounded up tons of like expats that might have been like in England or,
but
some
they
of them,
were expats for the most part.
And actually, it's one of my favorite weirdo stories. So at this meeting, it's not going well. And the Kurds, the Peshmerga, the PUK and the KDP, they do not like Shalabi, who is ethnically Lebanese, by the way. He's not even Iraqi. And they're telling the CIA, and the CIA's like, yeah, I know. They're like, the CIA's like, we told the American government this guy should not be trusted. And he's clearly, you can tell he's setting himself up to be, I'll be the new leader of Iraq when this is on it. So it's really, really super weird. One of the Kurdish commanders who was near me, a guy named Mullah Bakhtir, said something in Kurdish that, I always make this joke that I don't speak Kurdish, but I knew what he said. And he basically was saying, we're not going to tolerate this man. He's causing our soldiers to desert because he's saying he's offering $1,000 a day for anybody who joins the FIF. And he said, I think he said, I'm not going to tolerate that. And he put his hand on his pistol. And it's one of my favorite crazy stories because this dude could not have looked more stereotypical guerrilla commander,
Big white mustache.
No, yeah, like hard-looking dude. At least in my mind, he had two bandoleros, like badass-looking dude. And he goes, and I'm not going to tolerate it. And like I said, I'm not translating any of this, but I'm getting in the body language. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what he said. And the face you just made, I did that. I went like this, and he looked over and he caught me like nodding. And after the meeting, he brings me a plate of food throws it in front of me, hits me on the arm. Like, we're buddies now. And I joked, I was like, because he saw that I agreed with his leadership style.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Bafel Talabani later, and I said, yeah, I kind of like Mullah Bakhtir. And he goes, yeah, he's one of our best commanders. And he said, I said something like, I like his leadership style. And he goes, yeah, he appreciated you backing him up in the meeting. And then he goes, he's my father-in-law. And I was like, cool. But that's like, I enjoy that story because it speaks to how goofy the Pentagon is trying to manufacture an artificial resistance element. When I've given you a 50,000 person super effective resistance element that wants to work with the U.S. and has done everything we have asked them to do. And now we're talking about monitoring them. And what's creepy is, these folks, they want to go into Kirkuk too. They want to see Mullah Bakhtir, actually. There was a town he took called Jalula. And CENTCOM was like, Jalula, you can't take Jalula. We've already taken it. It's like, you can't take Jalula. You need to pull out of Jalula. And I'm like, okay, just to be clear, Mullah Bakhtir drove right to his mom's house, who he has not seen in 15 years. I don't think he's given up Jalula. And CENTCOM's like, that's not traditionally a Kurdish area. I'm like, it is. I'm telling you, when we drove in, everybody came out and welcomed us, and he drove right to his mother's house, to which she made us all dinner. So that's the Kurdish entity we are working with. Now that we're going into Kirkuk, we're getting stopped at checkpoints, whether it be 173rd, 430, and they're like, do you have a pass? We're like, no, we don't have a pass. And they're confiscating weapons from my Peshmerga. My Peshmerga are being very accommodating. They're calling me and they're like, hey, they took our weapons. Can we get our weapons back? The Free Iraqi Forces all have government-issued ID cards. And the conventionals don't know any better. They have been told the Free Iraqi Forces are the true resistance here. These Peshmerga are bad. And they're getting some of that from Shalabi. So, it's terrible. That leads to some very bad advice of de-Baathification, where if you were part of the Baath Party, you cannot be part of the future of Iraq, which everybody was part of the Baath Party.
Yeah, you didn't really have a choice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we're telling everyone,
if you were working in the government,
you can't be a part of Iraq. And similar to this, we are continuing to broker, I'll call it surrender agreements for what it's worth. And we have brokered several of them. But what we were legally calling a capitulation, because there's a difference. If you capitulate, you can switch sides right now. I can turn your unit around and you can go fight the Iraqis that don't want to capitulate. Mm-hmm. If you surrender, by international law, I have to demobilize you. I have to take you out of the army. I have to send you to a prison camp.
Oh, interesting.
It's bad. So we knew what we were doing. We said, I have a capitulation agreement. I love this because one of the things we did with the underground, we drafted a letter. Like when they knew we were here, we drafted a letter. And then the CIA printed it in Arabic on one side, English on the other. We laminated it. And we sent it with underground couriers to those division commanders and anybody we could send it to. And it said, Dear General, fill in the blank, it didn't say that the one you got, but it was like a telemarketer thing. It said, Dear General Khalil, we have personally selected you because you have a good relationship with the Iraqi people and the Iraqi military. Time is of the essence. Your country needs you. Please act now. But time is limited. And it really said, this offer will expire. You must act now. Contact me by the following means to coordinate the future for not just yourself, but your forces. And we were making the point that if you were an Iraqi general or colonel in the Iraqi army today, you will still be an Iraqi general in the army tomorrow.
Right.
That's the deal we are brokering. And we're starting to make headway with this now. We're getting close to it. Same time when they said take the U.S. flags down, now the word comes down, surrender is no longer, it's surrender or die. Capitulation's off the table. To which I'm freaked out. Because, I'm literally communicating on the phone with multiple guys who are not there. As I joked, I'm communicating long distance with this guy. He's not in Kirkuk. He's in Tikrit. And we had an agreement where you, Iraqi colonel, general, will bring in your 5,000 guys. And, when you bring them in, you'll be able to tell me who the guys aren't cooperating are. This is freaking brilliant. Right. This is going to be fantastic. And you're actually cool with this, that you're going to come in as an Iraqi colonel and you'll be part of the new Iraqi army. And you'll be like, the troublemakers are that guy. And, they're hiding in this town. All the things that I will never be able to tell you who are the wrong people in this town, where they'll tell you like that. Now the word comes down, the capitulation's off the table. And it's actually one of the most painful stories. It still chokes me up to talk about it. Well, we are communicating with a guy, and I'm doing this through my interpreter and the CIA. And we tell him, I'm sorry, my friend, this is no longer, the option is no longer available. And we're saying, I have to tell you it's surrender or die. And the guy on the other end of the phone, I forgot what rank he was, either a colonel or a general. And he says, do you know what you've done? Do you know what this means? And I said, I do understand that, and I regret it. I am sorry. From my own personal perspective, this is two professionals talking, not two adversaries, two professionals who had to fight each other, and we're trying to figure out a way to get to the future. And now we're being forced to do something we don't want to do.
Because for him, it was like his boys are not going to accept surrender because it's like cutting their balls off.
It's not cutting their balls off, but like they're going to be prisoners.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to be privates, sergeants, colonels.
Yeah.
And whoever made this, because we talked about like we should just drop flyers from the beginning saying, "Hey, Iraqi army, remain in place."
Well, I need to say something about
You're
that.
going to get paid tomorrow.
Right.
It's just going to be us paying you.
Well, and I'm going to come back to that because remember I said we didn't think about deserting as an option. We were thinking they would either surrender or fight.
Right.
And the issue is like if you're a prisoner and you are from, let's say you're from Kirkuk, like your tribe is from Kirkuk, you're from Kirkuk. When I go to the prison camp, is it going to be in Basra? And we're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and like you're like, am I going to be pulled away from my family as a prisoner?
Right.
And the answer is, maybe. So that's not acceptable. And
Right.
like I go back to this, I don't have you at gunpoint. I'm not capturing, I'm negotiating with you.
Right.
So you're 200 miles away and I'm giving you a very shitty offer where yesterday I was like, hey, why don't you come in and you'll still be an Iraqi colonel, captain, lieutenant, whatever you are. You'll still get paid. You'll still have your prestige. You'll still get to stay with your family. And you're like, that's actually pretty good. And they're like, I don't want to keep fighting you. I'm all about showing you the 10% of the Iraqis that are fanatical, that want to go into hiding. So this guy on the phone, when he says, you know what you've done, I said, I do, and I'm very sorry. And, as the exchange goes, and I know I talk about it in the book, where he said to me, Salam alaikum, peace be with you. And I said, and peace be with you, my friend. And he said, the next time we meet, it will not be as friends. And he said, and I regret that. And that's when I actually said, then peace be with your family. And he said, peace be with you. And I mean, we hung up the phone and I was freaking devastated.
Yeah.
I was like, what have we just done? Yeah. This is unbelievable. Now to your point, a month and a half earlier, when the United States was telling the Iraqis to surrender, it's a great story because the Kurds came to us and they're like, hey, why are you doing that? And we're like, what do you mean? And culturally, like, they didn't want to offend us and tell us what we're doing is wrong.
Right.
So they hinted at it, and you have to pick up the cues. Like, is something wrong? No.
They're like stomping the foot.
But like, no.
But I heard
We just wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? We wouldn't do it that way. And they're like, why do you hate the Iraqis? I'm like, we don't hate the Iraqis. And he's like, but then why did you ask them to surrender that way? And it took about 3 times to get it out of them. Like, what are you talking about? And like, the message that you are broadcasting to the Iraqis, clearly written by an Arabic speaker from the Pentagon, not an Iraqi. They're like, the way they described it, it's effeminate. The way we would hear it, it's polite. We thought it would be a professional, polite thing to say, we would like to offer you the opportunity to surrender. The way they hear that is, you think I'm the kind of guy that would choose surrender? You think I'm like a coward? And now they're telling us, they're like, no respecting male he can't take it the way you offered it. You're actually taunting him to not take it. He can't. And we're like, oh, that's a detail that's pretty valuable.
Wasn't there also some mistranslation in the PSYOP stuff about like instead of lay down your arms, bury them?
Yeah. Instead, hey, look. Apparently, Arabic's a tricky language. So instead of telling them to abandon, we told them to bury their equipment. And like later, if you remember,
They buried fighter jets.
no, right?
and
We
stuff,
found fighter jets, and people were like, "This is so weird." And I'm like, "It's really not that weird if you talk to them." They're like, "You told us to bury it."
right.
Yeah. That's a hit on the Sobs community on that one. But so this piece, we're like, oh my God. So we sent the message up to, hey, the underground feedback is the way you're sending the message, it's not acceptable. It can't be taken. We actually got a message from Condoleezza Rice back saying, hey, that was really, really valuable. Now, what sucks is a month and a half later, they overcompensated and like, got it, be mean, surrender or die. We're like, no, not now. That's what it should have been, again, completely wrong for the scenario. And I said it because I don't have a guy at gunpoint. Because the point earlier would have been, they were like, if you tell a man surrender or die, a self-respecting man can accept that. My only other option is to die.
Right.
I have to take the surrender. They're like, that makes sense. Now, fast forward where I'm like, hey, they're 100 miles away. I don't have them at gunpoint. And it's surrender or die, or take off your uniform and flee to Syria or to Crit. And they're like, I'm going to choose C.
Right.
And that's where we, I would say we created an insurgency that didn't want to be an insurgency.
Right. Well, and the other part of that was, I don't know who the brainiac was that got rid of the capitulation, but how are you going to replace this army like overnight? Like, where are all these people?
Right.
Like, you're getting rid of all the trained soldiers, and Now you just
Yeah. So I mean, the simple issue there in hindsight, and this is a great role for civil affairs folks. As we're working with the guerrillas, the underground, whatever you want to say, and let's say we're liberating territory, like you want to find people like we found with the Keys, like who here knows how to run the city, who knows how to run the power plant, these are not political figures, they're infrastructure professionals. And if you can find them, just like the Kurds did with the buses and the police, like if you can find them in one city and you get an agreement, like, would you be willing to go to the other city until we can find those people? Do you know your counterpart, power plant manager in the other city? And like, they're like, yeah, sure. I got them on cell phone right here. If you think that way, that our mission is to find people who can keep the infrastructure running, and that's how we're going to pull this off. And think of it like dramatic surgery. Like, if I rip your chest open, it makes it really easy for me to get in there with my arms and do stuff. Not good for the patient. So as a surgeon, your mindset is, if we open you up, we want to close you up as fast as possible. Combat's the same way. If I'm going to rip this city apart, I want to put it back together as fast as possible, because the longer it's ripped apart, the more that becomes normal. And it's harder to reconstruct it. And like, Kirkuk was brilliant. Like, we got Kirkuk up and running super fast. And it showed. Kirkuk stands out in the example of the first city in the north taken 100% by, indigenous forces, and it was also the most stable city very, very quickly. One story I forgot to mention that I do love, also because people were like, we were told we'd be welcomed as liberators. Yep, absolutely were. When we rolled into Kirkuk, the fighting was very, very intense right up to the perimeter, very intense, and that's when the army sort of collapsed. It didn't just collapse. Like, the Army's official history makes it sound like the Iraqis just collapsed. It's really weird. Nah, it's not that weird. Like, the fighting was super intense, and their last fighting positions, they abandoned them and ran into the city, and they literally ran right into the underground. Like, we coordinated that. But as we drove into the city, and we were having a hard time with all the civilians wanting to go into the city. Like, it was really, really hard to keep the population back from seeing Kirkuk, because many of them were kicked out 20 years ago, when Saddam Arabized, or did Arabization of neighborhoods. As we're driving in, the streets were lined where it's hard to navigate my vehicles. Like, I'm yelling at people to get out of the way. Everyone's cheering. They're getting excited. They see me. It's the first time we put American flags on our sleeves, so I look like a Kurd. I've got a big mustache. I might be wearing a neck scarf still, but they see an American flag, and they're like, "Iraqi?" And I would say something. I actually said yes in Kurdish, and like, I'm watching a guy cry. He's got his daughter. People were ecstatic that this is liberation. CIA counterpart, it's one of my favorite crazy stories. He jumps out at an intersection, he's got this box with him, and he grabs me and 3 other guys, and he's like, here. And he's got these American, flags, like the kind you would have at a parade. And he gives me a handful, he's like, pass them out. And there's a part of me that I looked at him, was like, where did you get this box from? He's like, we brought this. Like, this was part of the plan. We're now handing this box out, and we're going to hand out a couple hundred American flags, and then we're going to drive to the next intersection and do it again, So everybody sees thousands of American flags on the streets. It's freaky. And all the journalists now are seeing this and are like, the crowd is ecstatic about being liberated. So it creates an optic, and everybody now is on board. Everybody sees this. And with regard to the 173rd coming in a little bit later, I make this point that for the first 2 days in Kirkuk, maybe 3 days, my guidance to my guys was, we switched uniforms the second day. We actually put on DCUs. We shaved our mustaches very deliberately to look like different people. And I told the guys, the 70 Americans, there were 70 Americans in the city of 600,000. I need everyone in this city to see an American once a day. So we gridded out the city, and I gave ODAs, this is your neighborhood, this is yours. Drive up and down every street in your Land Rovers and make sure they see an American. I need everybody in this city to have seen an American once a day. We did a thing where, I did this more than once. We saw journalists across the street, and I love journalists. I think journalists provide a great role. I have many friends who were journalists from that conflict that I have tremendous respect for. But we'd see journalists on the street corner, and like, now we're like, okay, let's do what we talked about. So like, you'd shout to me like, we want to put this in the truck, and they'd be like, those are Americans, and they'd come running over to us, and we'd act like you got us, and we'd act, it was a whole deal. And they're like, oh my God, who are you guys? And yes, to our credit, we're like, we're the American paratroopers. You guys are a part of a paratrooper brigade? We're like, yeah, didn't you see us? Where'd you guys just come from? We just came from the airfield. No, we're at the governor's building. So we used them to spread the message that there is an American paratrooper brigade in the city. There was not. everybody in the city had secondhand knowledge of the brigade that is here. So like around day 2, I remember saying the 173rd's got to get in here because I can't keep this charade up any longer.
Right. You're doing quick change. Yeah.
We joked like we're gonna have to shave our heads tomorrow. We brought them in and they went to the airfield. It was a little bit hard to get them again off the Kirkuk airfield. And like I said, it took about a week to get them where you guys got to start going out and patrolling. Like they've got to see you. So that's really how Kirkuk was taken.
Yeah.
Talk to us then about sort of the, demobilization is even the wrong term because Special Forces was in and out of that country for the next like 8 years. But what was sort of the conclusion of this operation for you guys?
Well, so I was talking about like we culminated with the MEK. At least my patriotic unit of Kurdistan guys, we pushed the Peshmerga monitoring thing, like we put a stop to that was nonsensical. And we knew already, we were already hearing bits and pieces of, hey, we're going home. And it's a little bit disappointing to me, like there was a sense of we need to all, loosely, we need to all go home so we can stay on the summer PCS cycle. Like it freaked me out a little bit because I think all of us thought, like we all were in it, like this may take a year. And we were doing really, really well. Like we were really surprised by our success, frankly. And then we start getting told, hey, we're getting out of here. We're going home. And I will tell you, the majority of at least the team level guys were angry, very angry, because the feeling was we are walking off the field in the 9th inning because we're up by so many runs. Like that's the way we felt. So Tovo and I started talking about like what can we do to shore up the success that we've had. So we very much grabbed one of the Peshmerga guys, like sort of he's an Arabic and English speaker. He was one of the Talibani family members. Amanj was his name, great guy. And we deliberately took him and we flew to Tikrit to meet the 4th ID commander, General Odierno, he passed away a few years ago, but I mean, as good of a general as you get. He was fantastic. We met with him and we're like, hey, sir, thanks for meeting with us. We want to brief you on what these Kurdish guys did. So we gave him, and he was so accommodating, we gave him like a 2-hour briefing on every operation they did with us and what they did. And they're like, and this is Amanj. He is your emissary LNO. He speaks Arabic, Kurdish, and English, fluent English. So, Odierno was like, wow, this is unbelievable. He's like, I didn't know any of this. Thank you for bringing me this guy. So that kind of at least solidified, okay, the PUK are not your problem.
Right.
And the PUK can help you understand things going forward. The 173rd, the 101st came up to Mosul. General Petraeus took Mosul. He did not get that link up advice. So like he immediately was getting sort of bad advice that don't trust any of the Ba'ath Party members. And he got bad. The 173rd kind of told him not trust the PUK or the KDP. And it set him in a not super direction for the first few weeks. 101st did a great job. Mosul was a much trickier problem set because it's much more of an Arabic, it's a split Arabic Kurdish city where Kirkuk's mostly Kurdish. But that, he wasn't set up for the same success that we set up 4th ID, I think, in my opinion. And then we got pulled out of country. We went back to Carson very, very quickly, felt prematurely quickly. And I was PCSing, and I remember, I think I was home for like 2 or 3 days, and one of the teams came to me with like a con-op for scuba training or something crazy. And I was like, what are you doing? And they're like, sir, we want to, I was like, guys, let me help you out. Go home, take your leave with your families, come back, clean your equipment, and get ready. And I remember one of the guys goes, sir, they promised us we're not going back. Yeah, that's great. Go home, take care of your family, come back. And sure enough, things started to unravel around August, September, and the guys all got told they all ended up going back in about October, or not all of them, but a lot of them started to go back in about October. And that's about when it really started to unravel.
There's a section at the end of your book about some of the big lessons learned. We've talked about a bunch of them, I think, during this interview. But are there anything else that we didn't really talk about that you'd really like to tease out of this experience operationally that you'd like to pass on to some of the young guys out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much. And thanks for bringing that up. A couple of things, not to promote my book, but the book has a homepage. If you go to the book's homepage, which is the title, thosewhofacedeath.com, one word, no spaces, or Mark Grdovic, no spaces, markgrdovic.com, those sections, it's Annex A and Annex B, are on the homepage. Like, you don't have to buy the book. You can just go there and download the AAR from the operation, if you will. One of them is, Annex A is why we were successful. Annex B is observations about unconventional warfare. former instructor twice, so I have a very instructor's mindset. And I wrote this not just because it's a great story that's largely unknown, not just because I feel like the regiment should know this piece of our history. Actually, the Army should know this piece of the history. I wanted people to be able to learn from the lessons also. So, you know, it's not just a boring book about lessons. Like, I hope it's in the context of, this is a really amazing story, and there's some all pretty valuable lessons weaved in. I could talk about planning and you know, the approach to planning ad nauseum that would drive most people crazy. But like my original point about the way we approach planning, trusting your guys, making sure the words make sense. You know, your mission is an achievement, not an activity. You have to identify what's the achievement that's not going to take place on its own. The power of good leadership, what leadership, you know, is responsible for doing. And you know, I was responsible for officer training in the Q course twice. I take that piece very, very seriously. Like, and actually a lot of the team leaders were guys I put through the Q course. What's the role of the officer? You know, the role of the officer is to not just follow orders. He's supposed to be able to have some degree of psychic-like ability to predict or give vision when you don't have perfect information. And I get that, but that's your job. You know, everybody else can bitch that we don't know what to do. The officer doesn't get that luxury. He still has to say, we're going left. And then with regards to unconventional warfare, there's two things I'll say are my favorite lessons. Guerrilla activity, kinetic activity, powerful. Psychological activity or subversive activity, powerful. Put them together, it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 5. It's exponentially powerful when you use those together. And we didn't talk about it, but there's some examples, if you recall in the book, like with the airstrike, where after this really big airstrike, we sent a message exaggerating that, hey, we can kill all of you at any time. Not true. And we integrated that airstrike with, and we did that airstrike yesterday, super successful airstrike, really coincidental. We did that airstrike on that unit because they killed a woman at a checkpoint yesterday. That's actually kind of true, but we exaggerated it to amplify, so you should all surrender. I'm trying to get you to surrender. I can kill all of you anytime I want, but I'm not, because I want you to surrender. That's one that sticks with me, is the power of exaggerating to the enemy, your situation's hopeless.
Yeah.
Younger guys need to know that it's not just about calling close air support and just solving every problem with a $250,000 bomb. That's the power that you're bringing with an indigenous guerrilla force or an indigenous counterinsurgency counterpart. You know, it's much more than just kinetic firepower. There's a bunch of other great lessons in there. I mean, I love telling this story because I think it's very, very interesting. And I think, as you mentioned at the beginning, my position is unique. I saw the whole of the operation. This is not the war story about Mark. You know, I'm in there as a character. You don't really hear a whole lot about me, but I'm the guy that saw the whole story.
Right.
So I can tell you the story from inception to planning, to preparation, to execution, you know, and then draw the lessons out. And I'll say it this way. This is the instructor in me talking. Lessons, I love teaching lessons. When I put all those lessons together, I think this kind of comes across as almost an experiential, almost an experience. So it's not just the 7 lessons or 8 lessons that are baked in there. It's as if you, the reader, were a part of this operation and now know that experience. That's what I want to impart on the younger, special forces guys or conventional guys.
What made you decide to write the book now? I mean, what came about? Because I mean, this has like been one. It's a special forces legend in so many ways, but no one has really, I feel like, come forward and told this story before.
Originally, the number of people who know the entirety of the story, like literally probably me and Tovo, of this particular part of the story. And I posted something a little while back when I announced the book. The book came out last month, almost exactly a month ago. And I was like, this is an example of pro-level procrastination and pro-level resilience. I've been talking about doing this. When we conducted this, I knew I wanted to tell this story. So like, I was saving documents. I was like, oh, that's a great example. The schoolhouse is going to want to see that. So I was keeping things. I've kept in touch with many of the guys, not a surprise. So it was easy to interview guys and get additional details. Guys were super. Guys were sharing their maps with me. I'm going over maps with a magnifying glass trying to like see, what's that hilltop number? Recreating the whole Viking hammer thing by hilltop number was crazy. Like that was a bit of research. But it was about 2.5 years ago that I finally, just out of the blue one day, I was like, I'm going to start writing. And for anybody who's ever thinking about writing, that's how it starts. Start. I sat down at a laptop in a cabin in North Carolina on vacation and was just like, I'm going to start writing. And I wrote about 2 chapters, and that did get the ball rolling. And I'm like, I'm actually doing it. I've actually started it.
Yeah.
And it, you know, like all things we know, it might take a long time. It's going to take a lot longer if you don't start. And by starting, I reached an endpoint, and I'm very, very happy with the result. And the feedback has been great. You know, the guys who conducted it, it means a lot when I've had a lot of the guys come back and say, now my family can understand what I've done. I have something to show my grandchildren and, you know, grandchildren who are in high school or college.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that because, again, this is not the story of Mark in combat. This is not my memoir. It's their story. And I've been the keeper of it, and it's been a privilege to hold it, but I can't keep holding it by myself.
And the book is available now.
Yeah. You can go to my homepage and order it. You can order it on Amazon. You can order it on Barnes & Noble. It's you know, hardback, paperback, Kindle, and audio. For the audio, it is me talking. I speak a little quickly sometimes. That was a fun experience narrating it myself. But yeah, so all those formats are available. And I said on the homepage again, some of the portions. Also for anybody who gets the audiobook, if you go to the homepage, you can download the maps, the photos, and those annexes because the maps are an important piece of it. And the audiobook's great, but like you want those maps to understand. There's like 11 maps in there that talk about where the guys are going and what's, you know, the flow of the battle.
Yep.
Right.
Awesome, Mark. I mean, thank you for coming in and sharing your story with
it's amazing.
us.
My pleasure.
it's
I
fantastic.
appreciate this a great deal.
Yeah.
I read the book last week. I highly recommend people go and take a look at it. It was good, man.
I really appreciate it.
Anything else you want to tell people before we get going tonight?
I mean, we'll end up talking here for 10 more hours.
Should we talk about administrations?
Yeah, that's good. I will say this. You know, you and I spoke several years ago. We talked about the force is always evolving and changing, and it was when the SIFs got disbanded, the SIFs and the Crips. Yep. In the latter parts of this book, I returned to Iraq in the epilogue 4 years later, and I talked about what the coin fight was like, and I felt that was a really important piece to also capture. Because the regiment did such spectacular work in Iraq. I will often joke, and I was with 5th Group, by the way, for that tour. I will often joke that 5th Group has the responsibility for causing us to not lose in Vietnam faster. And in some ways, it's the same thing in Iraq. Like, we didn't win the war, but we prevented it from being lost a lot faster. And the work the teams did, predominantly 5th and 10th in Iraq, although other groups were there in smaller numbers, was phenomenal. And the SIF and CRIF and CREEs were really important parts of the community. The community is still struggling with those, but it's not just about what those companies do. It's what those companies bring as they spread that experience out to the rest of the force. And I hope it demonstrated in the back of the book. I'm a former SIF guy. Tovo's a former SIF guy. Jay Klein's a former SIF guy. Andy Grunland's a former SIF guy. You know, it's like those guys sprinkled throughout the force have a huge impact in the skills and the operational experience they bring to the force. And it was a big part of our success.
Yeah, I think you helped me with some of the documentation and stuff when I was writing my book about that topic.
Yeah, and that's something hopefully maybe we'll talk more in the future. Like some of the history of the SIFs, they've done spectacular things that is not largely known.
Were you the one that also, it was you or someone else who passed off the whole thing about how the 7th Group SIF got stood up?
No, that wasn't me.
That was someone else?
Yeah.
I mean, it was fascinating the way that was all put together. But yeah, that's another podcast.
We'll save that for another
We'll talk
time.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back anytime.
No,
it was fantastic.
Okay, you and I joked this. My mother would be very happy about that. So I'm originally from New York. Super happy to be here, back at home today, spending time with my family, did all the tourist stuff today. I've re-certified myself as a New Yorker on this trip, so it's been fantastic.
Sat in traffic.
Took the subway, ate pizza.
Okay.
There you go.
Went to the Horse Soldier Memorial. Really good time. I really appreciate it.
Great. So yeah, we'll see all you guys next time. Thank you, Mark. The
Thanks,
book
everybody.
is Those Who Face Death. Go check it out. Hey guys, I want to tell all of you today about a new newsletter that we're launching that encompasses both the Team House podcast, the Eyes On podcast, and the High Side news outlet, which I run with Sean Naylor. The newsletter is going to be once a week. It's going to come into your inbox, and you're going to get the most current podcasts on Eyes On and the Team House and whatever's topical or current on the high side. So it's another way for us to get the information out to you, as social media algorithms are pretty iffy and you never really know what you're going to get. So this is a once a week email. It'll slide into your inbox and it will have, the greatest hits of that week.
It's really good, man. I'm checking it out.
The website for it is teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. teamhousepodcast.kit.com/join. You go there and you enter into your email list, or you enter your email into the little thing on the website, and you're good to go. And that'll be it. So we really appreciate your support and hope you'll consider signing up.
Where's the link?
The link will also be down in the description if you're looking for it there.
And that's teamhousepodcast.kit, KIT, Kilo India Tango.com /join.